Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Friday. I have an empty seat next to me of the mama who's whirling around the living room still. We're sorting out our sake situation, getting some candles going, so we've got some light here. Please let me know that you can see me and hear me. You know that's just a thing lately. Before I start with my long list of happy Fridays, let me know that you can see me. Yes. Great. So, Christine, you can see me, I think. I'm just checking. I'm being a damage control nut, and I know there's a bit of a delay, but I just want to be absolutely sure. TGIF. Okay, great. See you bright and clear. That's all I needed to know. Thank you so much. We're here.
We're here.
We're here. We exist. We are not working in it. Thank you so much. So let's see which buddies are here. Christine is on. Happy Friday, Christine. We've got two, I'm not going to move the camera because it's too sketchy. We've got two giant candelabras here. We've got some lights flashing at us because we were just saying it's such a dark house.
My condo is just very dark. I don't know what's
it's so strange because it's so beautiful.
In the day, it's great.
It's fine in the day. At night, it's like, something.
You're living in Dracula's castle
it is,
or something,
like,
you know?
All right, Christine, happy Friday. Kira, happy Friday. I know you probably won't be here for all of it, right? You'll be here for some of it, or I know you had something going on tonight, so I'm surprised to see you. Happy Friday. Cynthia, happy Friday. Good to see you. Sheila, happy Friday night from Benton City, Washington. I want to say cheers, my dears, to everybody. Is that your sake? We just ordered sashimi, so we had some sake, and we've got the good stuff out. Let me do this so you can see the mama, too.
Oh, mama's is not worth seeing.
She's worth seeing. She's worth seeing. She's going to be playing along with us. Sheila, Kira, Cynthia, Martha, happy Friday in Ontario. Good to see you. Good to see you. I hope that you all found the link to your papers to look at the rugs as we go along. I'll hold them up, little copies of them, but I hope that you downloaded it or that your computer screen's just open in one of your other tabs. Is the pictures, of all of the rugs. There's 50 rugs tonight.
Yes.
It's going to be such a fun game. I'm super excited. I've been going over my notes for the last couple of hours to make sure that everything is ready and everything is good for us. Crystal, happy Friday. You're Friday. Let's make that into an adverb, Friday. That's a very actiony, not verb. Gosh, I wonder what figure of speech that would be, but it sounds amazing. PJs and a glass of wine.
Oh,
cheers,
God,
my
yes.
dears. Cheers, my dears. Christine, Martha. Because of you, Kimberly in Ohio. Kimberly in Ohio, I'm so glad to see you there. Welcome. Ready for game night? If you're not ready and you haven't pulled up the playing card yet, it's a free thing. Go to ribboncandyhooking.com or go to the Facebook page, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. It's right at the top in an announcement. You just click the thing and it should pull up the document that we're looking at. You don't have to print it because, of course, it's a lot. You took out the flashlight, too. It's not that dark. It actually helps quite a bit, though.
It does.
It does. That's not a bad thought.
You might take that candle down off that high thing, too,
Yeah,
Just bring it down,
No, that's very Phantom. It's very Phantom of the Opera in here. Okay, because of you, Kimberly's there. Doreen, happy Friday. Good to see you. Velma says hi. Hi, Velma. Velma is Crystal's little one.
Oh, how nice.
Yep.
Hi, Velma.
Yeah, she's a little sweetheart. Christine M. Keep you away from the chocolate. Patricia, happy Friday. TGIF to you. Good to see you. Linda B, thank you. I'm glad I'm here. Everything's sounding fine. The computer was trying to do an update 1 minute before the show started. It was it's like can we access it's like a joke. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Can we access your computer? And then it didn't want to do what it was doing. And I thought, oh boy, right before our big show. Martha, Kira, Linda H, happy Friday. Linda H, Sheila, Sharon, happy Friday. Good to see you. These are all the buddies. Everybody's here. Look, there's a lot of people here today. Teresa, great to see you from Minnesota. Happy Friday. You all made it. Robin, hello. Welcome back. Good to see you. See, we have so many new buddies on our page, and as a result, so many new buddies watching, which is just amazingly great. It's our network just keeps
blowing.
Yeah, and
growing.
It's all nice people.
It's just crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
Wendy, I'm glad you're there. Happy Friday. Good to see you. Jody, oh, she's there. She says, woohoo, good to see you. I'm glad you're there. Happy Friday. Kathleen, there you are. And I think I'm seeing you again on Sunday night. We're doing our dyeing class on Sunday night, the February edition, which is Box of Chocolates, which is like kind of purpley, pinks, reds, and browns. So a lot of very useful colors. And this month's kit came with a pattern of two primitive hands holding a box of chocolates, which has a lot of room for play. So you'll see how that works out next week. After we're done with that class. That's okay, Martha. There's no winning this time, and you can always look back. Hey, Jay, happy Friday. Joelle is on too. Happy Friday. Good to see you. You remembered. You're usually good. You're usually on. Jennifer C., you're all set for... You've been ready since what, like 9 in the morning, Jennifer? She wrote on the page, it was like
How
9 or something. Is it time yet?
Is it time?
Is it too early? Prims and Privies and Prims, good to see you. Joelle, Michelle is on. Michelle did the last dyeing class with me. That was super fun. Happy Friday. Good to see you. Heather, my buddy's on. Happy Friday. I miss you. Carol, I miss you too. I've got to see you soon. Happy Friday. Chrissy, happy Friday. Driving in the car and listening. You're so good. So let's see. Can we see you too? Because you are the co-host tonight.
I'm the co-host. Oh my God, don't tell me.
Yeah, you are the co-host. Still running around. Tech Savvy Son is helping out. Thank you, Tech Savvy Son. I could use you right here, but you're in Plymouth, so that's not. But so far, so good. So listen, I'm not going to do a lot of announcements because I feel like it's going to be a great show tonight. I'm super excited to run this trivia. So the premise of it, if you're just joining us for the first time, most people are not. We normally do bingo. We're going to do bingo once a month, and I'll talk to you later. We run bingo once a month, and we will continue to, but I just feel like our energy on Friday nights is very, let's interact and play. So I've Connie, good to see you. I'm glad you came on. Happy Friday. I just feel like let's try to do trivia once a month and bingo once a month if it works out. It's a big project on my end, but I really enjoyed it. This brings me back to the tour guide days. I know. You know, when I used to do all these games for the people on the buses.
Oh my God, what,
for the different destinations.
The bus is moving
and in those days,
and...
yeah, before the two kids, I don't know what was different in terms of like my body chemistry, but I could stand facing the wrong way the entire day,
going backwards, yeah.
bumping along with a microphone in my hand, and it didn't do anything. Now, if I just turn around in the car to see if the kids' heads are hanging on by a thread, I immediately feel like I'm going to be sick.
Yeah.
It's so strange. These things change. So let me move this danger fire candle because I'm afraid I'm either going to burn my wrist or start a little campfire. So you know what? Have your stuff open. If you have it open, I'm going to try to do my best to show you the image. I've got everything. Heather, I'll see you soon. You've got the little grandson tonight. I know you're running around with dinosaurs. So I'm going to show you the little image I have, and I'm guessing that you're looking at it on paper or computer. I will ask you a trivia question that relates to something in the rug, something that the rug brings up. Some of the commentary for some of the rugs will be longer than others just because I think there's more interesting material there. Sometimes I just chose the rug because I loved the rug and there wasn't a ton of commentary or a ton of interest, and others opened up to much larger subjects and thoughts and inspiration. And this is 99.99% general trivia. So if you are a rug hooker, if you are a gardener, if you are an astronomer, a scientist, a biologist, you're going to find questions that are interesting, that you love and need to think about, I hope. I hope it's challenging. So let's get started. Pull up your first page and let's begin by looking at number 1. I'm going to show this in the camera, number 1. Oh, here we go with this thing, right? That top one. Oh, look at this thing. There we go. It's a dog and a cat, number 1. See the dog and the cat? It's a very old antique rug with a dog and a cat together. Trivia question number 1. In what archaeological site were many well-preserved mosaic? In what archaeological site were found many well-preserved mosaics of cats and dogs? Multiple choice. Was it A, Alexandria, Egypt? Was it B, Machu Picchu, Peru? Hello, Linda. Good to see you. Or was it C, Pompeii, Italy? So you make your choice. At what archaeological site were there found many beautiful mosaics very well preserved. That's a clue of cats and dogs. So the answer is, and let's just say this informally because this is not a money game, unlike bingo. Thank you, Joelle. Joelle guessed A. A is not the right answer. There's a lot of guesses.
Too.
I appreciate you commenting too. That makes it way more fun for me. Nope, it's not A. Yes, Crystal, it's C, Pompeii.
Pompeii.
So the date of Pompeii is Mount Vesuvius. You remember that horrible story of the volcano erupting in 79 AD, 79, and later scientists, tourists, people went and found, 79 AD, of course they're people, they're not animals, but mothers curled up around little kids like this because the volcano blew and it came down at them, rolled right down into the town so quickly. There was nothing they could do about it. They were it was like amber. It was like flies in amber. They were basically buried in whatever position they got hit. And the interesting thing about Pompeii, I would love to go to Pompeii, as sad as it is, it's been attracting tourists since the early Victorian period. And one of the interesting things that comes out of it since the Victorian period is people have been using the lava and carving it into tourist, knickknacks. Not just knickknacks, like beautiful, the Victorians had beautiful jewelry, carved earrings that were cameos that were made from the lava from Mount Vesuvius. So to make a long story short, too late. The answer was C, Pompeii. Moving on to number 2. Let me bring number 2 in focus. The one with the birds here. There we go. Number 2 is the one with the birds. This is one of my favorite things Kathleen, have you been to Pompeii? And did you go on some kind of a Mediterranean cruise or something like that? Because it seems like it's kind of an out-of-the-way destination if you weren't kind of doing a few things at once. But what I've read about it with them bringing like donkey carts and stuff over to the site and, little things set up for you to buy souvenirs. It just sounds so good, so awful, but also so fun.
But good.
So the birds, number 2, the birds. This Antoinette DeVoe rug, so that's the last name, DeVoe, is a masterpiece of design that really, let me hold the rug up again. Oh, so I got to hear more, Kathleen. We're going to have to talk about that. This is like one of my dream things. Let me pull up the birds again. This Antoinette DeVoe rug is a masterpiece of composition. And you can see that this is a nautical theme. This is really, really, really different. Now, this came from, I'm edging toward the question. When I can, Sharon, more than 90% of the rugs that I'm using tonight are antique rugs that I found on sites like Skinner auctions, Pook and Pook auctions, Sotheby's, very few of them. This one, I will tell you as soon as I give the answer where I found this. So the ones I know, I'll tell you, but most of the ones I'm using are completely antique rugs that I've pulled off auction sites, and I will tell you the exceptions when I find them. Otherwise, it will be an antique rug of unknown sort of origin, unknown maker, just antique. I used a lot of antique rugs. Okay, great. Have to view with closer. Okay, yeah, I'll have to be careful pulling the thing up. So this thing of the birds, now this is a clue. The question is going to be where this rug was made in a community of rug hookers. And which community would this be, right? And the water is going to be a clue for you. This is going to be a community of hookers, and it's going to be a Canadian community. As we've talked about so many times on Coffee Times, these sort of groups that get together to supplement the income of a village that otherwise has very limited income. We've talked about several of these. So no more clues, but your choices are A, Quebec, B, Toronto, or C, Cheticamp. So we've got Sheila says Cheticamp, Linda says Cheticamp. It is Cheticamp. And I don't, you know what? I just realized I used this as the photo for one of the Coffee Times this week. So
that's all right.
So it was there.
It was a little
so
hint.
this is, Sharon, this I found in the Cheticamp book that I've been using all week and I'll be returning to on Monday. The Cheticamp book that Crystal's grandmother did the research for. The person that did this rug is called Antoinette DeVoe. And this just stuck out. When you think about the other Chetty Camp rugs that we've looked at this past week, this really, really stands out. This is not a commercial pattern. This is not like the other rugs. This is such a stylized sort of seascape using the Cruel inspired, like Pearl McGowan, Cruel inspired, it was so popular at that time, Jacobean effect to do like trees and nature. Very stylized and so different. That comes out of the index of the Chetty Camp book that we'll be returning to on Monday. Question number 3. This again is an antique rug. I pulled this off the Skinner website. It's actually larger than this. It had the same border on the bottom. I'm looking at the horse, right? It's like a carousel horse running. So here comes question number 3. A flying horses carousel is a fleet of horses. Now, if you know this, you know this, but I didn't know this until recently. It's a different kind of carousel than a regular carousel. On a flying horses carousel, each horse is tied to like a rope or a bar that swings out as the carousel picks up speed. So unlike a traditional carousel where it's anchored at the bottom, the pole goes into the floor of the carousel, a flying horses carousel does not work like that. And for that reason, typically they only allow children to get on the horses because there's a serious weight limit. When the thing picks up speed, the centrifugal force starts going and the thing flies out sideways, not down, but sideways. So a lot of fun. These carousels are very rare to find these days. Now, where is the oldest currently existing flying horses carousel in the U.S., in the country? A, is it in Central Park, New York City? Kathleen, I didn't know that until recently either, until I stumbled on a flying horses carousel. And I was very confused that I couldn't go on it with my big butt. And it's because of the weight limitation, because of the nature of the way the thing moves. It could be dangerous. It could literally fly off. Is it A, Central Park, New York City? Is it B, Watch Hill, Rhode Island? Or is it C, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod? Let's see what everybody has to say about that. This rug just looked like a horse to me. Doesn't it look like he's... Yep, my mom's right. Let's see what people answer. There's a bit of a delay. I will tell you the answer is B. The carousel at Watch Hill, Rhode Island, good job, Joelle, dates back to 1879. And what's so interesting about that carousel is that it was once part of a traveling, not a traveling circus, like a traveling show. Yeah. And they went bankrupt and they just left the carousel at the last spot that they could manage and they just disbanded and took off. And that carousel has been in Watch Hill ever since. Amazing. Like, isn't that an interesting, I didn't know that until the research for this show. They were forced to abandon it. So it's been there ever since. It ran originally by horses pulling it.
And I didn't know that.
I know, isn't that crazy? I can't even picture that.
We've been there many times.
Many times we've been there. That's where I got the biggest parking ticket in my life right there.
Know.
And in 1897, they changed it to water powered. And then in 1914, finally electric powered. And it is still there. If you're little or you're a kid, you can ride it. So the Central Park carousel, if you've been there, is absolutely beautiful. It's a 1950 carousel. The kids have been on that. I've been on that. It's the 4th carousel on that site because the earliest one was in 1871. But the previous 4 all burned down.
I know that.
Isn't that strange? What is sadder than a carousel like being on fire?
Burning, yeah.
And people just standing around. I'm guessing it's over the years people have smoked on carousels. I don't know. But 4 carousels burnt down, and the one that's currently there in 1950. And the one on Cape Cod on Martha's Vineyard is a beautiful one. That one, people argue, is the oldest carousel, not flying horses carousel, but traditional carousel in the country. And that was carved by Charles Dare. If you're into your carving and your carousels, he's probably the most famous carousel carver of all time, Charles Dare. And that one's been there since 1884. It's a golden rings carousel, but it's not a flying horses carousel. So, all right. So let's go on to number 4. So listen, as you get them right, give yourself some kind of a circle or a check. I'm not going to ask you for your total score. This isn't a test. But at the end, then you know you have a point score for everyone you got right. Just make it 1 point to keep things easy. And then we know how well you did on this one. Hull, you mean, Kira, Hull, Massachusetts?
Yes, yeah.
Remember we used to say, my sister used to live there, we used
to
say it's a hull of a place. I guess everybody says
old joke.
Everybody says that. Kira, no, I think it was either, no, I feel like it was New Jersey and Martha's Vineyard. It wasn't Hull anyway. I forget where the argument is that the first one is not the Martha's Vineyard one. but it's pretty good evidence that it is the first one. So no, it was Crescent Park, Rhode Island.
Crescent Park.
Crescent
That's
Park.
Aloof
Carousel,
Yeah,
so a different maker.
gorgeous,
Yeah, it was
gorgeous.
between Crescent Park, Rhode Island, and that one's still running, or Martha's Vineyard. Those were the other two. The son says, your mom is so sweet. Oh, she is sweet. She is sweet. So let's move on to Duck. There he is. You see Duck, and again, another primitive one. I pulled this one off Skinner's too. I think these were all past auctions that I was going through to try to find some nice rugs. Now I'm going to stick it in here and remind it to you later. These old rugs that are not commercial patterns, that are like old, like 19th century old. Some of the designs that are super old and not under copyright and have not been under copyright by an artist, unique patterns. I've put like 16 of them up on ribbon candy hooking. So after the show, if you've enjoyed looking at some of these older ones, they are there. They're under the folk art category. I like to add antique rugs that I don't see other people adding to their inventory. Some of the ones that I pulled up tonight, because of the amount of research I did, I was able to turn them into patterns. They will be available as PDFs tomorrow. I did this in a hurry, so I need to clean them up. But if at the end of the show you enjoy looking at some of the rugs that we are seeing, you will see that the patterns are for sale. Most of them are $48. None are more than that. I don't do the $70, $80, $90 patterns. They're all well under $50. So if you love them, you can look for them there. But right now, here comes your Duck question. I really like that one. It looks like there's some kind of weird pinwheel around Duck. According to Chinese restaurants, when they have been polled, what is the most popular duck recipe that Chinese restaurants are asked to make? Is it A, duck l'orange? Is it B, ginger stir-fried duck? Or is it C, Peking roasted duck? Patricia, yes, the Crescent Park Carousel is there, the Martha's Vineyard Carousel is there, and the Watch Hill, the Flying Horses is there. And it was even open this summer during crazy times. It was still open, and the kids were having a ball on it, wearing their masks. I didn't take a photo of it this year because it just is such a strange, Yeah. So what do you think? C. That was probably an easy one. It is indeed Peking roasted duck, which is also called Beijing. Whether they call it Peking or Beijing, it's the same recipe for duck.
That's C?
That's C.
Okay.
It's a nice marinated, I think when it comes out really good, they've marinated it overnight, because this is not one of your quick recipes. You're really supposed to marinate overnight. And the marinade is filled with nice things like ginger, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. I don't think I've ever had this dish. It doesn't speak to me because it seems so sweet,
Order it, yeah.
But people love it. It's the most popular duck dish that's out there, so it must be fantastic. You all got it right. Nobody. Paragon Park in Hull, Mass. See, I don't know that carousel. We're gonna have to take a ride up to Hull. We did? I remember seeing it. It's right on the water, right? I mean, it was years ago that she lived there.
God, yeah. Decades.
But I remember when we drove along the water, there was a carousel. It's got to be that carousel. Yeah. Interesting. Road trip.
We're ready.
All right. The last one on the first page is this one of the sand buckets. Right. So I love this one. I love this. I did a pattern last year with Joss that was like an old sand bucket. Delish, Sheila says. So the question for this one is, now you're familiar with these old like tin sand buckets, right? They're super collectible now. It's one of the many things that I thought I would love. Oh, Paragon closed long ago. It was a long time. Oh, what a shame. We missed it. We missed it.
I know.
We always went to visit her and we never went.
Yeah.
You remember these beautiful tin. This is one of the collections that I keep thinking I want, but when I see them in antique stores, they are extremely expensive. The nice ones with like litho, you know what I'm talking about? They're so beautiful, but they make a beautiful subject for a hooked rug. So, do you recognize this hooked rug? And do you recognize the designer and the maker of this hooked rug? Because this person has done quite a few books, a lot of articles, really a well-known person in the world of rug hooking. So, your choices are A, Ohio J. Chain, B, Polly Minnick, or C, Dion Fitzpatrick. I know, I love the sand in the bucket, particularly right now, right? So I will tell you, while you're looking and circling, the answer is yes, Polly Minnick, absolutely.
So that was what? Not what
Bought this
better?
book. Oh, you bought that? That was B, Polyminic. Yeah, Sharon just said after I did the review, I did a review of one of her books. I think I might have done both in the same review. They have a little bit of overlap, but not much. They're beautiful books. She does a lot of, Polyminic does a lot of Americana type subjects. She does a lot of stuff, articles for magazines that cross over, for example, rug hooking, needlepoint, that kind of thing. Penny rugs, wool applique, those kinds of publications. She does a lot with that, but she always does beautiful sort of American flag, Uncle Sam, Americana stuff, old time bathing beauties, things like that. She has a real limited palette that always involves blue, but somehow her rugs always sparkle and pop. She's just gorgeous. The first one was kind of a joke because if you do collect these pails, Ohio is the brand, the main company that used to make them, Ohio Arts, if you remember them. And J. Chain was the competitor in the early 20th century that manufactured these pails. So that was a sneaky deaky. So moving on to page 2, we're first looking at, this is one of my favorite rugs I've ever seen. Again, another antique rug from an old auction. This floral one at the top, the brown one. Look at how, it's so hard to know whether the brown was black and faded or whether it was intentional that part of it would be black and part of it would be brown. And it's also hard to know whether that ivory, all that beautiful fleshy colored ivory, is part of the original plan or if this is all faded as well, because I love the colors, as Mr. Roger would say, just the way they are. This is a masterpiece of Art Deco. So your question for this is, the Art Deco period was a movement in the decorative arts and in architecture that originated in the 1920s. And it developed into a major style in both Western Europe and the United States, a little bit later, 1930s for the United States. Its signature features, when you think of something that is Art Deco, whether it is architecture, pottery, painting, fashion, its signature features were sort of a heavy geometric influence, lots of triangles, lots of zigzags, loud, vibrant, even what we would now describe as kitschy type colors, very bright, very streamlined and sleek shapes. Sunburst was a popular motif and sunrise, popular motifs at the time, everything stylized. Your question is, which of these artists was not of the Art Deco period? Which of these artists is not an Art Deco period artist? A, Maxfield Parrish, B, René Lalique, or C, Louis Comfort Tiffany? So it's hard to, Chain did make dollhouses too. They made the metal ones, right? The beautiful, yeah, right through like the 1940s, 1950s. I have one up on my bookcase, like one of these Happy Days type houses with the green shutters, and so pretty, so pretty. So what do you think? I feel like this is one of the easier ones. So C, no. Tiffany that's a tough one because of course he's glass. He's stained glass and glass design, but he is right in there. Yep, it is A. He's right in there in the Art Deco. You got it right. Maxfield Parrish was the artist who was an illustrator who did very fantasy art, a lot of women sitting out on pavilions, pillared balconies with real fantasy, heavenly colors in the distance of oranges, light blues, lilacs. He did a lot with calendars, and the idea was you would frame the calendar later after the year was over. It was one picture and then the pages flipped with no more than the one picture. Then you would cut the picture out, put it in a frame. This was during a time when people didn't have any extra money for art. That little devil just bit me under the table because I kicked him by accident. Ooh. Not hard, not hard. He's just a Yorkie. But Maxfield Parrish is the answer. He was an illustrator that predates Norman Rockwell just by a little bit. So he's earlier 20th century, but not in the Art Deco period. Brandywine River Museum has some of his work. Oh, interesting. Interesting. You know, I'm not a huge fan, but I do love looking at his work because it puts you in a different mood, in a different place. And it makes me think of Graham for some reason. Did she have any Maxfield Parrish stuff around?
I think she did.
It's so weird. I always flash to her kitchen when I think of it. Maybe she had a calendar up at one point or something.
Did, yeah.
Okay, moving on to question number 7. Question number 7. So the rug is going to look like this, the Native American rug, right there with the little canoe, number 7. So your question is, Native Americans used canoes for traveling waterways. Goes without being said, right? That's the main way they traveled. The most common variety of canoe was made by stretching bark over a wooden frame. What kind of bark was the most universally used for this purpose? Was it A, cedar, B, sumac, or C, birch? What do you think, Mom?
I think it's C.
Yeah, she's right. It's C. It's birch. And if you picture it, if you've seen paintings, like detailed paintings, very realistic, or if you've been to a Native American art museum, it's a lot of birch, isn't it? You really don't see anything but birch. So maybe that was too easy.
That's all right.
But some of them have to be encouraging, right?
Yes.
Good job. Give yourselves a point.
Yay.
Give yourselves a point. So here comes the next one here. This is the seaside one. You see that beautiful little amusement park in the background. Isn't that tempting? All these great umbrellas. So take a good look at that. And your question is, this image of the Santa Cruz Boardwalk that was done by artist Dean was inspired by a vintage image from an old ... Now this question is meant to make you think. You can get inspiration from anywhere. Where did artist Dean get the inspiration for this beautiful picture? From a pack of playing cards? From a roadside billboard? Or from a vacation postcard? Could be any of those, couldn't it?
Could be
It really, because you know the old playing cards often have the thing on it. Billboards, they often advertise destinations, and postcards obviously do the same. So that's a tricky one. It's going to be a guess. I'm getting a lot of C's. Sheila says B. What are you going to go for?
C.
C. It is, Kira said A. It's good to have a mashup. But the answer is C, a vacation postcard. She found a
postcards
because she collects postcards. But you like it when it's always the same family and you can follow the whole.
I do.
You know, go through the years.
Oh.
So I just want to show you one more time in case it's not in front of you. That was a vintage postcard. But you know, she could have equally have found it on a deck of playing cards.
Yes.
Or they have books now. I have a book on old billboards, old candy tins. There's so many places where you can find inspiration.
God, yeah.
So go looking for it if you're stuck. Now, number 9. This is another antique rug. Absolutely no information. I forgot what it sold for, but it was a considerable amount with the horses. Absolutely beautiful. Very, very different. Very simple. Very different. Number 9. What is the oldest regulated horse race in the world? Regulated. Is it A, the Doncaster Gold Cup? Is it B, the Saratoga Racecourse in New York? Or is it C, Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky? What do you think?
Oh, God.
This is something for sports people or people who are into horses and racing. I didn't know this.
But I don't know that much about the race courses.
Yeah.
Wow.
I will say, since we're just chatting, I've been to Saratoga, and so I thought it was Saratoga. But I'm going to tell you it's not Saratoga.
I was thinking, is it Churchill?
It's not Churchill.
Wow.
It is the Doncaster Gold Cup. So it is a British course.
Oh, that makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
it makes sense because Doncaster is a British. I didn't want to give too much of a hint, but it's a British town. So that was a tough one, everybody. Unless you're a sporting person, a horse racing person, the Doncaster Gold Cup in Britain, in Doncaster, Britain, has been happening since 1766. Now, the Saratoga Race Course is a thoroughbred horse track. It's in Saratoga Springs, New York, and it opened up in 1863, so almost 100 years later. It is considered the oldest major sporting venue in this country, but it's actually the 4th oldest racetrack in the U.S. The one in Saratoga is a harness racing track. So they're not actually,
what it is.
yeah.
It's harness
It's like,
racing.
remember in The Music Man, he what's his name, Harry Hale or something, says like they sit right down on the horse, and he's warning the mothers. They don't sit right down on the horse with the harness racing in Saratoga. They sit behind the horse, which sounds deadly to me.
Yeah, I know.
It's like being in a
little teacup.
yeah, what are those cars that go-kart or something that you make out of a few
Behind
pieces
all
of wood
this
behind this thundering
giant
animal.
thundering horse,
And
yeah.
Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, opened in 1875, and that is the course, of course, that hosts the Kentucky Derby.
Okay.
So that's the
what it is,
chronology
yeah,
of those guys. Getting some good guesses here. I didn't either, Crystal. I just thought of things that had to do with horse races, and I thought, there we go. There's an opportunity for a question. Now here comes your next guy, number 10. Look at this sweet little lion. Look at this little thing. Again, another antique rug. It is hard to say whether this is a commercial pattern because we see in the 19th century so many rugs of lions. And it's very hard to tell because there is a strong naturalistic movement in painting. There is a strong naive movement in painting. It's really hard to tell whether there's copies of each other. For example, if this rug is unique, this is not one of the rugs I put up because I could not verify for myself whether this is a commercial pattern or a unique pattern, because it's close enough to other compositions that it's very hard to tell if it's just people loved lions or what. Remember on one of the coffee times, I think it was the episode we were talking about the hearth, and somebody had made a hearth rug with a lion because like a show had come into town and brought a lion. And it was a major event in the town when nothing else had happened for the last 10 years. And seeing this lion made this person want to put a lion on a rug because it was a major event, documenting something that had happened in their life that was, so different. So question number 10. This is a lion-themed question. The sports fans of, this is a sports-themed question actually. The sports fans of this European country are known for dressing up as orange lions at every international sporting event. I know you're going to know the answer.
I don't.
Is it the Netherlands? Is it Belgium? Or is it Luxembourg? Dressing up, I mean, we're not talking about a couple people. We're talking about like all of them. Dressing up as orange lions at all international sporting events. It's been going on for years. I love it too, Crystal. And there seems to be no end in sight. It seems to be the joke that keeps on giving. What do you think? Kira says A, the Netherlands.
I did too, just because of Ariane.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's the Netherlands. It's A. And
Son of
see,
a gun.
if you know the history of the Netherlands, you know that their royal family was the House of Orange.
House of Orange,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's
of
why it's
course.
orange. So,
Yes.
or ING Bank, I think, uses the orange lion as
That's
a.
right,
I think
ING,
So. Yeah.
yep.
So the Orange family, just like the Windsor family, right, in Britain. But yeah, they're the oranges, and they love their lion. They love to dress up as orange lions.
You're lucky Ariane doesn't dress up like that all the time, right?
I guess.
I
guess. So moving on to number 11. Let's see. This is less exciting, but still very beautiful. Another antique rug. Again, I was pulling a lot of antique rugs just because I like them so much. And we don't usually talk about them or touch on them. So it's this floral on top, a medallion rug with a lot of beautiful sort of feather scrolling and some flowers in the middle. Your question for this rug is... Oh, it's hard to see in this picture. Let me show you again. What I'm getting at is the background. If you can see yours better or pull it up closer on the computer, the background has that crazy brown sort of striated look. Let me see. I'm trying to get it really in focus for you. There we go. That's about as good as it gets. It's really pronounced. If you have it on the computer, you're seeing it better. It's like brown on brown. And you get this a lot in period rugs. And your question is, what 20th century design team or duo first referred to this kind of background brown striation? It's a hit or miss background, but it's done tonally. Who's the first duo that referred to it as marble cake background? Was it A, Pearl and Jane McGowan? Was it B, Cynthia and Francis McAdoo? Or was it C, Mercedes and James Hutchinson?
God, I'm never gonna
That's a
remember.
rug hooking one. It's a rug hooking question. So there's a few in here that are for rug hookers, hardcore rug hookers. I think Lynn says B to this one, or maybe that was the last one. So Pearl McGowan and Jane McGowan, Cynthia and Francis McAdoo, Mercedes and James Hutchinson. That's a you gotta know one. I covered this on Coffee Time a couple times.
I know.
I find
That's
it
why
hard
I'm
to not
ashamed
talk.
that I don't remember.
It's just one of those things, isn't it?
I know.
Well, the answer is C. It's Mercedes and
I
James
said B.
Hutchinson.
Okay.
Good job, Sharon. That's the first mention of it that I've heard, that I've read. It's in the Joel and what's her name, Copbook, Kate Copbook. But it's the Hutchinsons. I think it's a great way to describe something that's two-tone brown like that, because the
Oh,
way
I remembered the marble cake.
exactly
That really
it's
stuck
just
in my
what
head.
it looks like.
Yeah.
It's just what it looks like. So great on that. If you've got to give yourself a point. Now let's go to number 12. I'm moving along because we got 50, and they're all, I hope, good. So I'm looking at this one here that has that heavy kind of golden border in the flower center. Many borders, 1, 2, 3 borders. Well, if you're not counting the scrolls, just counting the color changes. It's this one right here.
Yeah.
So your question for number 12. Now, this is for people who garden and are interested in plants. This is going to be one of your questions. Roses have long been revered for their beauty and for their powdery tea type smell, their fragrance. Some roses were developed in the United States as hybrids of existing varieties. So, which of the following is not a rose that was created in the United States? Again, this is very specific for people. I know there's a lot of flower people and garden people out there. Otherwise, it's a guess. Is it A, the bald hip rose? Is it B, Champneys pink cluster? Or is it C, the damask rose? Which one was not a hybrid that was created in the U.S.? That's a hard one. I think when you hear the answer, the logic is there. So I will tell you, you circle, but I will tell you, it is the damask rose, because the damask rose is the rose that's always referred to as like the English rose.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, it's very strongly associated with England. So the answer is the damask rose. That is soundly an English rose. Now the bald hip rose was developed in Washington State, and Champneys pink cluster rose was you have them in distilled petals. Oh, you had them last summer. How nice. How nice. So Champneys pink cluster is interesting. It was developed in 1803. Thomas Jefferson cultivated roses, and he did a lot of this playing with species and varieties of roses at Monticello, his garden at Monticello. And he sent many bushels of native roses, the seeds of them that he had developed, to France, to one of his friends there. Now, John Champneys was from Charleston, South Carolina, and he introduced this new class of rose, which was a new rose, and it was a cross between the Rosa moschata and the Rosa chirensis. So this was a hybridized rose that was produced by Champney from South Carolina in 1803. That's really early to be fooling around with. But, absolutely. I mean, they were doing such crazy stuff in those days, such advanced stuff. So that answer was C. Now we're coming to this one here, which is so different. Isn't that a different composition? I had to put it in here because I loved the rug, number 13, but I struggled with what to give you for a question because the rug is so different. So I went in this direction. Abstract art can be anything, can't it? I thought, like, does this look like a molecule, like a berry cluster, like arrows? What is it? Abstract art can be anything. That's the get out of jail free card, isn't it? Now, it's art for art's sake. People have always loved literal interpretations of things. We love realism. Even expressionists and impressionists are dealing with literal images that are altered through their own filter. But abstract art is something else. Abstract art has no reference point, right? You are abstracting something to the point that you can no longer recognize the thing. That's the point. So, of these artists, which of these is not an abstract artist? A, Jackson Pollock, B, Vincent van Gogh, or C, Vasily Kandinsky? Of course, you have to know the work of these people. So this is a question for people who love art and are museum goers. Which of those is not an abstract artist? Come on, you know.
I would think it's B.
You would be right, because of course Van Gogh is an impressionist.
The first one is the splatter.
The first one is the splatter.
And Kandinsky is so
wackety,
crazy,
stackety.
really
I love him.
Great.
He's all shapes. He's all shape driven. Yeah. So the correct answer is B, Vincent van Gogh. He was an impressionist. He did things like chairs and portraits and sunflowers and night skies, but you could tell that they were sunflowers and night skies. He was not an abstract artist. He was an impressionist. Good job. Give yourselves a point on that one. And let's move up to number 14. Look at this little guy. This is one that I put on the page. These two dogs. Again, I think this is a Pook and Pook auction. I have a lot of auction catalogs too, like tons and tons from years gone by. Anything on folk art in auctions I get just so I can look at the old rugs and try to solve little mysteries in my head, none of which I've actually ever followed through or gotten through. But one of these days I'm going to find something I'm looking for and make some major breakthrough. So number 14, the rug with the two little dogs. So there's a famous story about two dogs, and this is how it goes. It's a story about how there's a master, right? This is an old-timey story. There's a master in a house, and he gets two dogs. He trains one of them for the hunt, and he trains the other for guarding the house. Upon coming home from the hunt, the master would routinely give a large part of the spoils to the guard dog. In other words, the thing that they caught. He'd give a large part of that to the guard dog. Now the hunt dog would complain that the guard dog was given a large amount, and he resented it because he was the dog that chased the thing, caught the thing, killed the thing, retrieved the thing. And the watchdog responded by saying, "Do not blame me, my friend, but find fault with the master, who has not taught me to labor, but to depend for subsistence on labor of others." This is a moralistic story, right? So the moral to the story was, children cannot be blamed for the faults of their parents. When you teach someone something, you have to expect that they're going to react exactly the way that you've trained them and taught them to react. So this is a moralistic story. It's called a moralistic story is called a fable. So that's going to be a clue. Which writer wrote the story, The Two Dogs? Was it A, Hans Christian Andersen? Was it B, Aesop? Or was it C, Rudyard Kipling? What'd you choose?
Is it B?
You always second guess yourself. Of
I
course
always
it's
do.
B. It's
Aesop's
Aesop.
Fables.
I was trying to not say fables, but I couldn't stop. I kept saying moralistic story, and I had to say fables in the end. You all got a point. It was Aesop's
Yay,
Fables.
That
one was maybe too
point.
easy.
No, we need that. We do.
So here comes number 15.
I love that one.
I love this one too. Well, we love the Cape, right?
Absolutely.
So this is this beautiful house. Everybody got that one. That was a grand slam.
Yay.
15 is this beautiful house. Now this is a Cape Cod rug, and this was sold at an auction on Cape Cod. Maker unknown, designer unknown. It's probably the person's house. Wow. This appears to be. I researched it a little bit. It appears to be a one of a kinder. So Cape Cod is known for its very particular style of architecture. It's known for a lot of things, but that's one of the big ones. So although there are several varieties of houses on Cape Cod, the classic sort of Cape Cod style house is quite iconic. Particularly if you've been to the Cape Cod, you know what the style is, and there are these styles of houses in other parts of the countries now. Now, of the style, there are many styles within it. It's a Russian nesting doll of styles. Which of the following kinds of house is not a Cape Cod style house? This is an architecture question. Is it A, the half cape? Is it B, the bungalow? Or is it C, the strawberry box? You're going to know this question if you are an architecture person, or if you just love looking at house plans.
It's not an architectural. The question is, it's not an.
It's going to be this style of house. One of the answers is not this style of house.
I don't have my glasses.
Okay, everybody's saying B. Here, look. Everybody's saying B, and you are right. B is the right answer. It is not a bungalow. A bungalow.
That was my guess.
Yeah, bungalow's typical features. One of the great features of a bungalow is the front porch. Yes. So this is a cape, right? The Cape Cod house is a style of house that has morphed over the years. There are many styles of Cape Cod house. This is a full cape. If you see, it's like a little salt box, right? It doesn't have the roof line of a salt box. It's got the central door, and it's got 2 windows on the right, 2 windows on the left. Sometimes when you have the house and it literally looks like this, it's a door with only 2 windows on one side. That's a very small house, but that would have been for like a sea captain who lived alone, like a bachelor. The bigger house is 2 windows on each side. Sometimes you get a 1.5 cape that's like cape, 2 windows on one side and one on the other. There's so many varieties of the straight cape. So the half cape is the kind with the door and 2 windows on one side, but no windows on the other. Very small cape. And the strawberry box,
what is that?
It's a kind of a cape. It's another style of cape that's roof line is just a little bit different. It looks like a wooden strawberry box, like a little wooden strawberry crate, but it's a cape. It looks almost exactly like that, but it's the roof line starts up a little higher. It looks like a little strawberry box. But the bungalow is the one that looks different, totally different style of architecture. And again, one of the signature things with the bungalow is you almost always get that front porch. Good job, everybody. Your friend lives in a half cape. They are the cutest things. It's one of my favorite things when we go to Cape Cod to spot capes. Full capes, half capes, strawberry box capes, quarter capes, 1 1/4 capes. It sounds so crazy, but it's so fun to identify them, you know, because they're like cookie cutters. Other than their size, they're cookie cutters. And the smallest ones, the half capes, are just the cutest. They're cute as a button. They really are. They are so sweet. So moving on to number 16. We're doing okay for time. We usually go a couple hours when we play games, right?
Yeah.
Here we go. Moving on to 16. There we
That
go.
one's wild.
Now this is the one up top, right? It's got all the stripy stripes.
Mm.
And your question for this is going to be number 16, this one. So often, as we know and as we often talk about, quilt patterns are the inspiration for hook rugs. So much crossover between quilters and rug hookers. Often the inspiration, whether it be in the border, in the background, the main part of the composition, whatever. Huge inspiration looking at old quilt patterns. In this example that we're looking at, what is the name of the quilt block, right? So the quilt block has a name, an equivalent, and we're seeing that as a repeat in this design. What is the name of the quilt block? I'm going to show you one more time, hopefully in focus. Nah, not in focus. Oh, right there, boom. Look at, they're so good. I haven't even read it out yet. A, rail fence, B, log cabin, C, lattice square. You're getting some good clues from your very knowledgeable friends here. It is a rail fence. There's always quilters in the crowd. It's the rail fence that does like this. The quilt pattern does the exact same formation. It's an A. It's called a rail fence. Can be easily confused with a log cabin because a log cabin can do so many things when you color it in different ways, but this is clearly a rail fence pattern. Great job. Give yourselves a point for that. That was super. Now this is one of my favorite subjects, the history of board
Parcheesi
games.
board, look at it.
It is indeed. So we're looking at the colorful Parcheesi board. I can't believe I forgot to write where this is from. Oh, I found this on one of the websites. Oh gosh, what was it? I'll have to add it to the comments later. I'm so sorry. I had it in my head and I thought I'll never forget. Yeah, it's on one of the Contemporary Now websites. I'll add it to the comments later. I'm sorry about that. But this is the game of Parcheesi. And Parcheesi was actually introduced from India. And it was originally called the India game because of that. So it was introduced to the U.S. in 1883 when Parker Brothers, who were in Salem, imported it, right? And started marketing it as the India game and later Parcheesi. Now, this is 1883. In 1843, so 40 years earlier, W and S.B. Ives, that was the name of their company, also in Salem, Massachusetts, released a game that was considered the first American board game. It would later become known as, actually, I'm not going to tell you. I'll finish that sentence later because it might give you too much of a hint. The first American board game, and I just have to insert here, it's not a coincidence that these companies were both in Salem, because at this time, Salem, Massachusetts was the most important port in this country, and they were importing and exporting from all over the world. So every company that was something or meant to be something would have their residence in Salem, where the boats were coming and going. That's where the selling and the buying happened. So do you think that it is A? Do I see skip ads in lower right? I don't. Kay, do you see skip ads in the lower right corner? That's so strange. I don't think you should because it's a live show and not a playback. How strange. Lily, you came on. Good to see you. Can't get on. Just see an ad for Candy Crush. Seriously? That's crazy. Oh, I don't know anything about that. I'll have to try to figure it out because we're doing a live show. You get it when you do playbacks on YouTube, but you shouldn't get it in a live show. That's very strange. If you started it from the beginning, maybe it considers it not a live show. Anyway, the first American game that came out in 1843, do you think it was called Mansion of Happiness, The Checkered Game of Life, or The Landlord's Game?
Wow.
It's a hard one. I'm going to tell you because it is a hard one. Just make a guess and see how it goes. The answer is the Mansion of Happiness.
Nope, didn't get it.
This is a real trivia question. So the Mansion of Happiness was marketed as a moral and entertaining amusement.
Wow.
It was a board game inspired by Christian morality, so important theme of the time. Players raced around a 66-space spiral track in the style of the game Goose, if you know the Goose. It becomes the game Life, right? Life, the game of life. But it originally looks more like the game Goose. So people travel around the 66-space spiral. It's a roll and move game. And the goal is to get to the Mansion of Happiness, which is the end of the track. Just like at the Life game, at the end is like the end, right? You've done well. Your family's in the car. You got 6 cars behind you with these little pegs that don't fit. It's that same kind of a thing. The popularity of the Mansion of Happiness was huge was huge, even though it was a moralistic game. It challenged the last decades of the 19th century, when the focus at the end of the 19th century was a lot of capitalistic behavior, a lot of materialistic behavior, a lot of just bad behavior. So this game really challenged what came immediately before it. So the correct answer is A. Now, just to fill in B, the checkered game of life also becomes a variety of life. It becomes a different version of the game that we know as life. It's another roll and move game. In the game, you would try to, these were the squares. You would try to, for example, persevere, land on a square that said persevere, go to college, influence the tax office.
Wow, where did that come
That's
from?
real specific.
Yeah.
Avoid idleness, avoid suicide.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough.
Whoa.
Avoid prison, avoid poverty, avoid intemperance. So this doesn't sound like a lot of fun either.
I know.
It's
I would be like,
heavy. That was
do
the
this game.
checkered game of life, very checkered. You would go toward good things like investment, money, and success. But yeah, you wouldn't want suicide, prison, idleness, or
I know.
anything to do with tax, right? And the landlord's game became Monopoly. The landlord's game came out in 1903, and that became the game Monopoly.
That made sense.
If you're at an antique store and you see the landlord's game, get
Grab
it. Don't hesitate. Yeah, I know that threw you. That was a bit tricky. I was trying not to say the word life because I thought it would be too confusing. So I think that was a good one. Now, number 18, this is a cute rug. You see this guy here?
Was
the
that
little
18
piggy?
that we did, or is it no?
I think now we're on 18.
18, okay.
And it's a pig with a cart. This is Boston baked beans. This is number 18. So this is going to be a Boston question. I told you not that long ago, I was reading this great book. I forgot the title of it. About the history of food in New England, particularly southern New England. And she made the point in the whole first chapter that it was so odd that Bostonians liked baked beans because they had gotten them from the French and from the northern New Englanders who put beans into maple syrup for like preservation and for flavor. But Bostonians put them into molasses. And it was the only thing that southern New Englanders ate that was sweet. That wasn't a dessert, that was sweet. It was a real anomaly that people ate this and that it is the signature food of Boston. Now, this is a Boston question. The Great Molasses Flood, also known as the Boston Molasses Disaster, in the north end of Boston, which is the Italian neighborhood, in Massachusetts, of course, what happened was that a large storage tank filled with 2.3 million gallons of molasses burst, broke open, and the result was a wave. This is a true story. You can't make this stuff up, right? Was a wave of molasses that rushed through the streets at 35 miles an hour, instantly killing 21 people and injuring another 150. That doesn't count. I've read so many accounts of the animals who died.
Oh, the
like
horses.
Domestic pets.
Yeah.
They had no idea what was coming at them. It was absolutely insane. The event entered local folklore, and residents claim to this day that when you walk through the cobblestone streets in that part of town, that your shoes stick to the pavement because the molasses is still there. Christine says, we had beans and hot dogs every Saturday night growing up. That's one of my favorite, particularly the big pieces of white fat that's in the beans, right? That part's my favorite. They stay, you can still smell it on certain days. I think that is, in a way, charming, but what a thing. So your question is, what year did the Great Molasses Flood happen? Was it A, 1799, B, 1819, or C, 1919? Ooh, you have to read Dark Tide. Oh, are you kidding me, Patricia? Is there a book about the molasses flood? Because if there is, obviously I'm going to read it. I read all of these books about disasters. It's just C. Joelle says C. Joelle, you are right. It just seems to me remarkable that this happened so recently. I mean, it's like a 20th century. Awful. I mean, it's just awful. Can you imagine?
Drama.
Talk about carousels catching fire, a wave of molasses coming at you at 35 miles an hour. These are just things that you don't expect when you go to bed the night before that you're going to be combating in the morning, just awful. So the correct answer was C, 1919. Give yourself a point for that. Kathleen, I'm getting that book. I'm going on Amazon later because I thought of something a minute ago, and I'm going to pick up that book too. I'll see if it's
You're
on
gonna
Book-a-Set
dream
first.
of drowning in molasses.
I'm gonna have the worst dreams about the kids being trapped under layers of molasses underneath the ice, you know. The kind of stuff I dream
In a
anyway.
fire.
Just layers of sweetness on top. Yeah, and caught on fire. So now we're looking at what number is this? 19.
19? I'm way off. What am I doing?
And, Kara says it has to do with the change in the outdoor temperature. Do you mean like the thing bursting? Because that would make sense,
that would
wouldn't
make
it?
sense,
That the
yeah.
expanding and the contracting, that would make sense. Interesting. So we're looking at the stag here. What is the stag? Okay, so we're looking at the rug of a stag. Now you've all seen rugs of, you lost your feed. Rugs of stags, and they're all beautiful. Of course, the most famous one is the Edward Sands Frost, and that one is gorgeous. This one is different. I love this one too. Let me show it one more time, just in case it's not in front of you. It's just real different, isn't it? Very folky with these huge, huge flowers. It almost has that Snow White kind of feel, doesn't it? Now, here's your question for number 19. What does the stag symbolize in the language of heraldry? Okay, this is a real specific one. A, will fight if provoked. B, strength and perseverance. Or C, courage. See, Kara's in Plymouth, so she knows a lot about the Boston history too. I love that.
Yeah.
What do you think? I will tell you the answer is A. It's good guess. I mean, they're all guesses, right? Because they could all apply. But the correct answer in terms of heraldry is A. Will fight if provoked. In heraldry, strength and perseverance is represented by a ram. And courage is represented by, unexpected, a unicorn. Unexpected, right? Think about medicine, but a unicorn, I was surprised by that one. So the correct answer was A, will fight if provoked. Now this is one of my favorites. I put this one into the folk art section at Ribbon Candy Hooking. I absolutely love this top rug. Lily, did you get on? Did that Candy Crush go away? Now we're looking at this top one here. This is number 20. Very, very busy rug. I had a hard time finding what I wanted to do with this rug, but I decided that this looked like buds. Doesn't that look like a lot of little buds?
You're right.
So buds are often, this is another gardening plant type natural history question. Buds are often useful in the identification of plants, especially woodsy plants, like in the winter when the leaves have fallen away and you can really see the buds. So which of these fruits/vegetables is an edible plant bud? Okay, that's the key thing. It's a bud. Is it A, an artichoke? Is it B, a date? Or is it C, an olive? See, this is a plant question because there's so many things like you hear people say like a strawberry, you're eating the stem part and the seeds are the berry part. So you're actually eating many. So it's not actually a fruit because you're eating the stem part. You always get this with science that it's not what you think. So one of these is actually a bud that you eat. What do you think? I can see you posting, Lily. I can. A. Yep, you're right. It's an artichoke. Good job. It's an artichoke. Really good. Good deductive reasoning. Unless you knew, it's a huge bud.
Huge bud.
Good deductive reasoning, though. Okay, let's go to 21. Now it's this pretty one with the blue, with the flowers. Isn't that a crazy Wonderland thing? Good job. Nada, I didn't know you were on. Good job. Welcome. I didn't see you. I'm glad you're there, though. Now we're looking at number 21, the kind of blue background. Crazy, crazy, crazy abundance of flowers, right? It's this one right here.
Yes.
Now I'm going to ask you another gardening question. I know a lot of you are gardeners. I know that. So that's why I go in this direction more often, maybe than other subjects. The English garden, this is also a great question for people who tour or go to England a lot and do house tours and garden tours. The English garden became popular in the 18th century, and it represented an idealized view of nature, untamed, right? It was a more wild, seemingly overgrown naturalist's dream that sprung up in revolt of the more stylized, very manicured, if you can picture it, formal gardens that were in vogue in the 17th century. So if you think about the French gardens at the chateaux when we visited, very different than the English garden, which is wild. It looks almost overgrown. Which of these plants would be out of place in an English garden? Okay, so picture the English garden as being like a mess of color and different heights and wildness. versus a much more manicured garden that we would see earlier. Which one would be out of place in an English garden? A, a muskmallow, B, a hornbeam, or C, a cornflower? You know, there's so many people who garden, it's crazy. Every time I bring up a plant, there's 20 comments about, you know, something real specific. So I know some people are going to know.
Idea.
Well, I will tell you, because there's a delay, that the answer is B, hornbeam. Would be very...
I don't know what that is.
I'll tell you.
Oh,
It
tell
would be
me.
very out of place in a wild type of a garden. It would be very, good job, Patricia, in place in a formal garden. So a hornbeam is a hardwood. It's a flowering tree, right? So it gives flowers, but they look very skeletal, very strong. It's very, very, very hardwood. It's part of the birch family. It's favored in an in a formal garden, because you can do a lot. You can train it. You can do a lot with its limbs. Very, very hardwood. It's not used for general carpentry because it's so hard, but it is used for things like carving boards, cutting boards, tool handles, coach wheels, and piano actions. So like not the piano keys, but the actions inside, because it can take a slamming and never get any damage. So the hornbeam it's a flower produced on this tree called the hornbeam. It's a flowering tree. Now A is a muskmallow. So the correct answer is B. A muskmallow is a little purple. It's a very papery looking, almost translucent, beautiful little purple flower that looks like an upside down umbrella. Native to India, cultivated for its seeds, and it's also used for perfumes in place of musk. When people don't want to use musk, they use muskmallow, which is a lot softer. It's also used as an essential oil. It's used in traditional medicine, and it's used to flavor foods. So it has a lot of uses. It's it looks like a little piece of paper, like crepe paper.
Something. Wow.
It's so pretty. And the cornflowers, you probably know. I only know about the cornflower because of the book and movie Room with a View. They talk about cornflowers a lot. It's also known as the bachelor's button, a beautiful, unique blue. Yeah, beautiful, very unique blue. An annual flowering plant that grows like a weed. So that kind of a plant would be very at home in an English garden where everything just grows crazy.
Yeah.
Now let's look at number 22. I hope you're all having fun here. I'm really enjoying. I gotta get a
Refresh. Come on. Let me fill it and warm it up a little bit. I'll be right back.
All right, she's gonna warm up some sake. So here we go. We're looking at these two dogs. Number 22. Hollyhock is a mallow. Interesting. See, Patricia, I know that you're out there. You're gardening experts. You know what we need to do besides planning some rug cooking tours is plan some garden tours. I've got to learn more about gardens. I've got to start learning about truffles and mushrooms and anything to do with plants and being outside. Anything that involves walking and exercising would be good right now too. But I've got to learn more about gardens. So we're looking at these two dogs. Now, I originally was going to write you a question about like Staffordshire dogs, but this isn't a color problem. This is another antique rug. Right, Kira? Wouldn't that be fun? This is another antique rug. Again, this is an old auction item that's not there anymore. I just found a photo of it. I think that this one was Pook and Pook. Again, they do most of the folk art stuff, particularly with textiles. But I was going to do a Staffordshire question about this, and I thought, no, you know what? With these brown dogs looking like this, these look like chocolate moles to me. So here comes for people who love cooking, baking, and food trivia, here comes a chocolate mold question. Here it comes. The very first chocolate molds, now you know what a chocolate mold looks like, the metal thing that closes, and this is my next collection. I'm just gonna say it. These things are so beautiful to find, and they're so tactile, shiny. But the first chocolate molds appeared in France in the mid-1830s. Sometime around the 1860s, the silver wash, they were made with silver, like all silver, was replaced by tinning. So they would tin it instead, the outside of it, which was like molten tin that flowed over the mold and sealed it. And the tin was not only less expensive than silver, but it made it last a lot longer. So the molds that we're seeing now, for the most part, are tinned. If you find a mold in an antique store that you think is 100% silver, buy it right away, right? Unless the price reflects that. So one company alone, they were called the Anton Reich Company. They operated for 90 years. They alone created more than 50,000 different chocolate molds. Now, ice cream molds look a lot like chocolate molds too, right? They're a little bit different in the way they operate, but they look very similar. A mold that closes and makes a three-dimensional character. Now, these molds are highly prized today. A quick search of eBay. By the way, most of what I'm reading is questions that I wrote. This is why I'm stumbling over it, because I wrote it. I often get stuff from Wikipedia. So just so you know, if I'm reading from Wikipedia, which happens, it's from Wikipedia. Otherwise, most of these questions are my own. But if I'm reading from a blog or something, I will tell you that. That hasn't happened yet. A quick search of eBay will turn up a lot of Reich, and that's R-E-I-C-H, chocolate molds in the shape of anything. They did everything from antique pistols, hot dogs, race cars, roosters, to Easter bunnies, and of course things like dogs and cats. Yep. Dogs and cats were always popular. So some of these antique molds sell for under $20. I guess those are the ones I'm going for. But others are going to set you back several or many thousands of dollars. Super collectible. So I did a search, and don't do it because this isn't a money thing, so don't cheat. I did a search of recent ended eBay auctions. In the last month on eBay, which of these molds do you think performed the best? In other words, which of the following molds that I'm about to describe, chocolate molds, went for the most money on this past month on eBay? A scene from a German market, Christmas market. B, a night watchman with a club. Or C, a lapdog that looks exactly like these lapdogs. Now you are going to know this. Oh, let's hook in a garden Kira, right? We'll mix it up. You can come say hi, Jess. Come on. Oh, God, that's hot.
I was going to say, be careful, honey.
Come here, come say hi. Jessie wants to come on camera for a minute and say hi to everybody. It's Friday night, so we'll let Norma Desmond come in.
I was going to get a piece of paper.
Here, come here. Don't knock down the things. Come here.
I was going to get a piece of paper.
We'll let Norma Desmond come in. You see the turban?
I was going to get a piece
Go get a piece of paper.
But Teddy has a whole pad upstairs.
Watch the plug. Watch the plug. Watch the plug. Step over. Let me see you step over.
Yep. There's a whole pad of paper upstairs, sweetie. Right on the table in Grammy's room.
All right, getting some. Did you like that guest appearance by the little nutcracker? Norma Desmond. She is such a character. Cool. She's gonna be super eccentric. All right, so the answer was, I'm getting a lot of C's. I'm getting A's. I'm getting no B's.
Is it B?
It's not C.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I tricked you. That was just that was jumping off point for me to go with this question.
So that was what the...
No, the answer is A. It was a scene. It was a scene of a little Christmas market. If you look it up on eBay under sold auctions, it was a little scene, and it showed a stall, and it showed a figure of Santa in the front.
Oh, okay.
So it showed a Christmas market, typical German Christmas market, not, of course, the European Santa, not the Santa that we know, the Coca-Cola Santa, but the German Christmas scene sold for $5,700.
Oh, my God.
Now, the night watchman with his club sold for $755.
Oh, my God.
That's still a lot of money for a mold. The lapdog, just like the one in this rug, sold for $59.99. That's $59.99. So I could go for that. And I have to add that with the exception of the night watchman with his little club, all of the chocolate and ice cream molds that sold in the thousands or near $1,000 were all of them Christmas or Easter.
I was going to say Christmas made sense because it was just past.
Easter just as much. Yeah. I saw no Halloween. I'm not sure that they did Halloween molds. Well, certainly not in the 19th century. Yeah. But the night watchman with his club, even at 800 or 755, he was the highest up there for a character that was not the Easter Bunny or Santa. So I thought that was an interesting thing. So, all right. So let's move to number 23. We got to speed up, man. We got to speed up. Now, 23 is the rings. 23, my question for you. The historic command of the Oddfellow, so the group called the Oddfellows, founded in England in the 1700s. Their mission is to visit the sick, to relieve the distressed, to bury the dead, and to educate the orphan. This is a fraternal organization, like the Masons or the Knights of Columbus. The first lodges of this benevolent and social society appeared in the 1730s as an offshoot of Masonry. The order came to the U.S. in the 1800s. In April of 1819 in Baltimore, Maryland, the Washington Lodge No. 1 was founded. As with most fraternal organizations, there's a lot of history and mystery associated with them. Dad was a Mason, right? There was lots of mysteries, such good people, lots of ritual ceremonies, all that kind of thing. And with the Oddfellows, the symbol of the Oddfellow is the interconnected links, right? That's why I chose it for this, the interconnected rings. When you see them done in wood too, that is a symbol of the Oddfellows. Now, most of these organizations, including the Oddfellows, has a female counterpart for wives and daughters, that kind of thing. What is the name of the female counterpart to the Oddfellows? If you know someone who's an Oddfellow, you're going to know this off the top of your head. Is it A, the Order of the Eastern Star, B, the Rebecca Lodge, or C, the Society of the Hive? Joelle guessed B, and you are right. It is the Rebecca Lodge. I don't know if that was a guess or you know an Oddfellow, because I know the Oddfellows are very strong. I know one of the Garrett Blue Nose patterns was the lynx. I have it, and that was for the Oddfellows. So I know that they're very present in Canada too. Kira says, I know someone who lives at, Kira, don't make me crazy, who lives at an odd, it must be a beautiful old lodge. Rehabbed it, but it still has a, can we go there, Kira? Like seriously, can we go and visit your friends?
Can we go have tea?
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. I want to go. So, the answer was B, the Rebecca Lodge. The Order of the Eastern Star is the female counterpart to the Masons.
That's what I put.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the Masons.
That's the Masons.
Yep.
Because if Dad had lived longer, I probably would have joined that.
I
just
know.
to, be part of it.
They were all like 90 years old.
That's the best part, though.
I
They all
know.
got
So
110
many
stories.
stories.
Yep.
I know.
I want to hear all their crazy stories.
I know.
All right, number 24, we're looking at, they are. We're looking at 24, the Eagle. Oh, Kara, seriously, I want to go if you think she'd ever let us in. I guess I mean me, not you. She'd let you in. So, number 24, the bald eagle's role as a national symbol is linked to 1782. Its landing on the Great Seal of the United States. Shortly after the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1774, the Continental Congress gave Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams the job of designing the official seal for the new nation. However, the Founding Fathers failed to come up with a design that won Congress's approval. So they had to get two more committees going and gave them the task of coming up with a seal. We all know that Benjamin Franklin was a great lobbyer for the turkey. He considered the turkey to be the most courageous of the birds, and he felt that the bald eagle had a bad character in the way it conducted itself. So he was totally against it. We all know the story about the turkey, but other founding fathers submitted other unsuccessful emblem ideas. Which of the following is not one of the ideas? So in other words, which of these three is not one of the proposals that they considered in place of the eagle? A pelican in its nest feeding its young a cod. B, Hercules choosing between a flowery path or a rugged uphill. C, the children of Israel in the wilderness trailed by a pillar of fire.
Oh my God.
Michelle has another
one. They all
one.
sounds like losers.
I know they all were losers.
They all were losers.
Michelle, see, this kills me. This old lodge stuff. This is why I was obsessed with Dad being in the Masons. I was so interested in it. It was even before those national whatever movies with Nick Cage, right?
Yes.
It was before all that. I just thought it was so cool, a fraternal organization. The answer is, and I have to say, I won't give myself a pat on the back. The answer is A. I wrote A, which I have to say I think is okay. The pelican in its nest feeding its young with a cod. I made that one up. Completely made that one up.
That was the one that seemed most
No, well, I was thinking about when I took a trip to Bruges in Belgium. They had some kind of a bird with birds in the nest. So I thought, let me run with that and add a cod, and it might sound right. But no, that was a complete makeup.
You devil.
B, so give yourself a point if you chose mine, because I'm real proud of that one. Just kidding.
It on it.
No, just kidding. The answer was A, right? If you have that, you have 1 point. So give yourself a point. The one about Hercules was actually
honest to God.
Yeah, John Adams submitted that idea. John Adams submitted Hercules.
That was my worst one.
Flowery path, rugged uphill. That was John Adams. And Thomas Jefferson's idea was the children of Israel with a pillar of flame following them. Awful, terrible. He had some bad ideas apparently.
Bad ideas.
Moving on to number 25. 25, and again, this is a beautiful little thing. Add a cod, it's going to work.
Add a cod, it's good.
Now, this is the beautiful village scene, isn't it? It's almost like, instead of flowers or whatever, they look like oranges, but I think in this case it's poppies. Beautiful little village scene. So let's look at number 25. Now,
yes.
I'm going to go with the theme of poppies because they appear to be poppies. Poppies have long been associated, of course, with World War I, Flanders fields. Poppies spread easily in soil where there are high levels of lime. So in other words, the reason that poppies spring up in Europe in places where that have associations with fighting and rubble is because all of the places that have been bombed and there's been rubble and it's become part of the earth and sort of the pH of the earth, they have a high lime content. And poppies, these are all like war-affected areas, and magically poppies grow. It's almost like a magical thing, but it's not. Poppies grow because the lime is growing. So battlefields and settings where there's been a lot of rubble, bomb sites, these are areas where poppies spring up. There are a lot of curious and interesting facts about the flower, the poppy. Which one of these, I won't say facts, which one of these is not true? I made up one. Which one? A, poppy seeds are needed to make morphine. B, poppies combined with rose petals are traditionally used to make tea in China. Or C, the first crop of poppies in the UK was destroyed by hares, rabbits. The correct answer is B.
Darn it,
I made up
again.
B. They are used for morphine. Yeah. They are used for morphines, and the first crop in England was destroyed by rabbits, hares.
Son of a gun.
Yeah.
See, I thought the one with making the tea, having the poppies and getting a little high.
I got you.
I know. I thought that was great,
It's like that game we used to play with Aunt Joan. I won't start, but yeah.
Oh my God, we played so many games with
It was
Aunt
this
Joan.
game. I wish I could remember the name of it. First or last.
First or last.
Where you would get, if you were the host and it was the round, it was your turn, you would get a book like War and Peace or something like that, or whatever, The Sun Also Rises. And, you'd see the first line was the best of times, it was the worst of times, whatever the first line was. And you would have to write a first line or give the choices on the card, including the actual first line. But if people voted for your first line as the actual one, you got tons of points. But it was a great game. You could choose the first or the last line. It was a writing game. You had to make up a line, but it was amazing.
It was great.
All yours, I'm not making fun of you,
I know.
but all hers started with like, no matter whether it was Hemingway, Shakespeare, what, it was like, the light glinted over the table and hit the coffee cup of the beautiful woman in the white shining dress. And when you heard about light or blinds or something or candles,
you knew it was
I was
me.
like, anyway, it was super. It was super funny. It was going to number 26. It was super funny.
I love it. I love that one.
You like the cat?
I love the
number
cat.
26. Real distinctive cat. So number 26. Let's see. We see a lot of cats in our rug hooking travels, don't we? But this artist is really distinctive. I really love this artist. From Reading, Massachusetts, she and her husband Steve often worked together to develop her original designs. It became clear early in her hooking career that she had a particular talent for designing original work. Having done much custom designing over the years, as well as a lot of writing, she recently remade the historic Magic Rug by the Hutchinsons at Beauport in Massachusetts. I've talked about her a lot on Coffee Time. Who am I talking about? Is it A, Happy DeFranza? Is it B, Laurel Birch? I'm sorry, I wrote Lauren, but it's Laurel Birch. Or C, Leslie Ann Ivory? Because there's a delay, I will tell you that the answer is A, Happy DeFranza.
I got it.
So, yeah, I got to meet her at Beauport when she was restoring the Magic Rug. I absolutely loved it. Laurel Birch is a very famous cat artist. But she's
horses, too. A lot of
somebody
great
has,
stuff.
I don't know who at the moment has the licensing for her work, but her work is available as a rug hooking pattern.
Yeah.
And Leslie Ann Ivory did a lot of paintings of cats on greeting cards and calendars, day books and journals, but not rug hooking patterns. Yeah, so let's move on to number 27. I got to clip it up here because we're getting late. We got so many more to do. Oh my gosh.
Well, you could always end early.
Could always end early, yeah. I hate to skip my questions, so I have such beauties. So number 27, one of the striking things about this rug is that the apparent hit or miss pattern in the sky is actually an amazingly articulated depiction of wispy cirrus clouds. Seeing pictures in clouds is one of the greatest gifts in games Mother Nature gives us. See, I wrote that and that was a bit corny.
I knew that would have been me. Yeah.
Which of the following is not a type of cloud? Nimbus, A, B, radial, or C, stratus?
Okay.
And the answer is B, radial.
Yes.
Good. I think that's probably an easy one. I thought radial sounded like it might be a cloud.
Yeah.
That's why I've stuck it in there. So let's keep going. Move on to number 28. These beautiful lilies on top. Good job, Joelle. Everybody got it. Good job, Kira. So we're moving on to the lilies, number 28. The lily has, within the language of flowers, always been associated with fertility and purity. The lilies in this rug look like stargazer lilies. There are so many varieties, including a lot of beautiful white lilies like the Easter lily, the Madonna lily, and a lot of orange lilies like my favorite, the tiger lily. I know that's your favorite too.
Yep.
There are also a lot of female lilies who have been famous over the years. Which of these lilies is a Canadian architect?
Oh my God.
Is it A, Lily Ingalls? Is it B, Lily King? Or is it C, I'm sorry, did I mess that up? I thought Lily Langtry was supposed to be in here. Where's Lily Langtry? A, okay, A, Lily Ingalls, B, Lily Langtry, C, Lily King. And while I was messing that up, the answer is A.
Yay!
Lily Ingalls. Good job. 1926 to 2010, a Canadian architect born in Milan, Italy, educated in England, moved to Canada, joined the Ontario Association of Architects, became involved in historic preservation, fairly well-known architect. Lily Langtry, born in 1853, was the famous actress who was the consort to many royal family members. Kind of sketchy, shady kind of history. She was a naughty lady. And C, Lily King was a novelist born in 1964. She's from Massachusetts. Her first novel was called A Pleasing Hour. It won the Barnes & Noble Discover Award in New York Times notable best book. She's won tons of awards. So someone to look up. But the correct answer was A, Lily Ingalls. Moving on to number 29. It's this pretty one with these crazy gumdrop trees, right? These little village houses and the gumdrop trees. So, number 29, the trees in this rug look like they are filled with gumdrops. And it made me think of the song The Candy Man from Willy Wonka.
Oh, yes.
Now, gumdrops are an old-fashioned candy. You know they're like little dome-shaped candies covered with granulated sugar. Dots that are made in the U.S. are a little bit different. They're still gumdrops, but they don't have the granulated sugar on them, and those are still out. But the original little gumdrops were made of flavors that kids would probably not like now, like allspice, clove, and anise, spearmint, cinnamon. Those are the ones I like the best, but those are the original flavors of the gumdrop. The first reference to a gumdrop is in 1801, and the first reference in print to a gumdrop in somewhere public is in 1859 in the Illinois State Chronicle. A candy shop advertised gumdrops. That's the first reference written ever about it. Now, gumdrop is not the first candy made in the United States. What do you think the first candy was? A, Good and Plenty, B, Gibraltar Rocks, or C, Cherry Mash? Bye, Robin. Now, the answer is B, Gibraltar Rocks. First, let me tell you, the correct answer is B. First, let me tell you, Good and Plenty's were introduced in 1893. They're the oldest brand of candy in the United States, right? Good and Plenty is the brand. They're the pink and white capsules that are like black licorice on the inside. They were first produced in 1893 in Philadelphia. Cherry Mash was introduced, oh, wait a minute, I lost my commentary on Cherry Mash. That was a weird one. In 1918, it was the best-selling candy of the time. It was something like, it was a quarter pound of chopped roasted peanuts covered with chocolate and cherry fondant. It was made by the Chase Company that was formed in 1876 in Missouri. It was a Missouri candy, very, very recognizable. The Chase Company made a lot of candies. But the correct answer was Gibraltar Rocks. And this is so interesting, too. This is something that comes from Salem, Massachusetts. Yield Pepper Company now owns Gibraltar, the candy. They were once used as money currency. They were that popular around the world. You could use them as cash. If you were coming from Salem as a sailor or a trader, you could bring a bunch of Gibraltars and use them as cash. So they were introduced in 1800, 1800. They were the first commercial candy in the United States. The year 1800, Mrs. Mary Spencer and her son were shipwrecked in Salem, Massachusetts, coming from England. The townswoman felt sorry for her and raised money for her to get a barrel of sugar. With that, she made a Gibraltar candy and sold it in front of the church.
Wow.
So in 19th century Salem, this just went on and on and on. No sort of high tea was complete without having Gibraltar rocks on the table. It's a big deal. You can go to Salem, forget the Salem witch trials. That was 1 year. You can go to Salem and visit the replica of the Friendship. You can go to Ye Olde Pepper Company and buy Gibraltars and also blackjacks. Same recipe. They come in more than one flavor. Same recipe now as it was in 1800. Wow. They are super tasty. So let's see. Yep, next question, number 30. We're looking at this one here. This little winter scape. This little hot cocoa scape. So number 30. I got this from a blog called Go Hook It. It's Go Hook It Blogspot. You're probably familiar with this. This is how the blog read. The entry was called Winter Sleigh Scenes, Hooked Rugs in Quebec, January 20th, 2010. I'm reading from the blog. This old antique rug in the living room of my childhood home, I have always loved it, and it is totally responsible for me learning to hook my own rugs. My father bought it in Saint-Jean-Port, Port-Joli, Quebec, on the St. Lawrence River in 1936 for $3.50, which he had to borrow from his father, and he did pay it back. It is based on an original painting by, that's going to be the question, famous at the time for his work that was so loved and copied by artisans all around the world, much to his dismay because copyright was not a thing back then. The pattern was hooked many, many, many times. I have seen many versions of it in lots of places, but one version is hanging in the Auberge Soutan outside Montreal as part of their amazing and wonderful rug collection of old Quebec. This little primitive rug scene, again, I'll show it to you. Who is the artist that was not protected by copyright, who had this image of his reproduced so many times? Was it A, Georges-Edouard Tremblay, B, Clarence Gagnon, or C, Tom Thompson? This question is for the Canadians and for very knowledgeable art people. And because we're running late, I'm going to tell you that the answer is B, Clarence Gagnon. And this is a quote from Clarence. He said, it was not the oversensitivity of the misunderstood that made me move to Paris. Over there, I painted only Canadian subjects. I dream only of Canada. The motif remains fixed in my mind, and I don't allow myself to be captivated by the charms of a new landscape. In Switzerland, Scandinavia, everywhere, I only recall my French Canada. So that's for you French Canadians. I thought that was one of the most beautiful quotes I ever heard. He painted rural Quebec landscapes. He was a great promoter of Canadian handcrafts, all kinds of crafts. He was born in rural Quebec. He spent much of his life in Scandinavia and Paris, but he always came back. He always came back. He painted, and he was very successful, but he always came back to Canada. And he died in Canada. He was born in Quebec, and he died in Quebec at the age of 61 in 1936.
61.
Yeah, I could not find the cause of his death. It didn't say anywhere, but he was, Canada was in his heart no matter where he was. Now let's quickly move on to number 31. This fracture one here. 31. Fracture art is highly artistic, elaborate, illuminated folk art associated with the Penn Dutch, Pennsylvania Dutch. It always involves script and art created between 1740 and 1860. Drawings executed with ink and text, watercolor, lots of varieties that document births, marriages, anniversaries. Has to have a written component or it is not a fracture. Common artistic motifs in fracture work, there's a lot of repeats in them, but which one of these is not a common motif that you would find in a fracture? We see a lot of fracture in hooked rugs. Which is not a common motif? A, tulips, B, clocks, or C, hearts? And the answer is B, clocks. Yeah. Tulips, always. Hearts, always. I put clocks because I figured all their dates and stuff that maybe a clock would be tricky. But the correct answer is B. Clocks do not appear in fracture work. So now let's look at number 32. We've got this little owl. Look at this great owl scene. Cute. I love your guesses. Keep guessing. I know there's a delay. Here is the owl. Now I had so much to say about the owl. So I'm going to The Owl and the Pussycat, you know, the famous poem by Edward Lear, 1812 to 1888, very famous English writer, illustrator, musician, sort of the founder of nonsense verse, right? A very famous person. He was also a great artist, and he taught Queen Victoria watercolor painting, like in Buckingham Palace. So a very famous person. He wrote a lot of things that I love nonsense verse because as with lots of grown-up jokes, sometimes stuff for children is not really meant for children. There's jokes in there for grown-ups too. And Edward Lear's work is, considering he's like the founder of the limerick, a lot of his stuff is for adults. So for example, he wrote a piece called The Mad Gardener's Song. It's a poem. And this is my favorite line from it. It speaks to me. See if it speaks to you. I think it's so profound. It goes like this. He thought he saw a rattlesnake that questioned him in Greek. He looked again and found it was the middle of next week. The one thing I regret, he said, is that it cannot speak. Now, isn't that so profound? I mean, it sounds like nonsense. He thinks he sees a rattlesnake, but it's not only a rattlesnake, it's the middle of next week, which is impossible to see because it's abstract. And the thing he's saying, like, I wish I could see into the future, right? I wish I could know the next thing that was going to happen. It's not for children at all. It's such a big thought, you know. It's a rattlesnake. It's the middle of next week. You know, I wish it could speak too. I wish it would give me the lottery numbers. But this is the way that he writes, and it's so beautiful and it's so interesting. His most successful work, of course, was The Owl and the Pussycat. For me, it has a lot less interest because it's such a literal poem, right? I mean, it's a narrative poem. It's a story. It doesn't have those little things in it like the Mad Gardener's Song. If you're familiar with The Owl and the Pussycat, which of these lines does not appear in The Owl and the Pussycat? Which one did I make up? A, to the land where the monkey tree grows. B, and there in the wood a piggy-wig stood. Or C, they danced by the light of the moon. Oh, Catherine said that tulips represent the Trinity in Pennsylvania Dutch art. Oh, that's really pretty. That's nice. I will tell you the answer is A. I made up the line to the land where the monkey tree grows. The other two lines are in the poem. No, the piggy wig. From the piggy wig, he gets the ring from his nose for the wedding ring.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's move on to this one, number 33, the sheep. I love to see these guesses. I'm reading them all. Okay, come on, sheep. Come to me. Come to me. There we go. Look at this great sheep. I put him into the folk art on my page too, if you like sheep. So here comes the sheep question. Sheep are so popular. They're such a common motif for us in rug cooking because we're fiber people, right? Some of us are such fiber people that we decide we need to keep sheep, right? And it really goes full circle. There are so many breeds of sheep, over 1,000 breeds of sheep, and over 60 breeds in the U.S. alone. Which of these breeds is not a real sheep? Which one did I make up? Is it A, the black-faced Persian, B, the white-faced Somali, or C, the blue-faced Leicester? Now, you have to be a sheep person to know the answer to this.
I'm going to guess B.
What did you guess? You're right. It's B. I made up B because everything had a color and a face. I made up the white-faced Somali. So B is the right answer. If you've got it, give yourself another point. Moving on to number 34, we've got a Thunderbird. Good job. I got some of you. I tricked some of you. See, that makes me feel good. That makes me feel good. So the next one, the Thunderbird is number 34. The Native American Thunderbird symbol represents power, protection, and strength. He's often seen as the most powerful of all the spirits, and he can transform into a human by opening up his head like a mask and taking the feathers off as if it was like a blanket. So some tribes view the Thunderbird as an omen of war. In other words, when they hear thunder, that's like some kind of a war call, and then they go into ceremonial gear and start smoking tobacco. Thunder is often the foretelling that they will win. So they start their ceremonies, their really elaborate ceremonies, and then go into battle. So this is part of the culture. Now, bolstering the warrior's heart. Symbolism is an important part of the Native American culture. And of course, it can differ from region to region and tribe to tribe, but just like language. But what is the Native American symbol across the board for lighthearted freedom? This is specific, right? Lighthearted freedom. Is it the butterfly, the coyote, or the bird? this is tricky because it could be any, right? If you're up on your Native American lore and storytelling, you're going to know that the correct answer is C, the bird. It's the bird. Because of his flight, because of his ability to take off. The butterfly represents transformation. At different colors, different things, but transformation. And the coyote is a holy creature, but he's also a trickster and a deity. He represents mischief, selfishness, greediness, not great qualities. Number 35, snowflakes. Number 35, moving on to snowflakes. There we go. Isn't that one gorgeous? This, oh my God. I'm doing it again. I'm blacking out. Whose pattern is this? God, why didn't I just write it down? It'll come to me. If it doesn't come to me, oh, I almost had it. Okay, I'll put it in the notes. I'm getting nervous because I got to get through a lot. It'll come to me. It's out right now. I'll put it in the notes. Number 35. Okay, so Wilson Bentley, who was born 1865, died 1931, is known as Snowflake Bentley or the Snowflake Man. He was an American meteorologist and photographer, and he was the first person to take detailed photographs of a snowflake. He perfected the process by putting flakes on a background of black velvet, outside obviously, so they didn't melt. The techniques that Bentley used to photograph snowflakes, number one, proved that every snowflake was unique. He was the person that proved that every snowflake was different. His techniques are still used today, and the quality of his photos at that time, in the late 19th century and early 20th century, were technically so great that nobody attempted to photograph the snowflake for over 100 years. The photographs were so good. He called snowflakes tiny miracles of beauty, and he referred to each snow crystal as an ice flower. So he almost had his own language for snowflakes. The Caldecott Medal in 1998 for the Best Illustrated Children's Book, that's what that medal is for, was called Snowflake Bentley. And it was a children's book about his life. That will be on Amazon. It's a beautiful book and beautifully illustrated. In what town did Bentley live? Where is the Snowflake Man from? Is it A, Woodstock, Vermont, B, Conway, New Hampshire, or C, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Canada?
God.
Now, I happen to know because I brought my tour group through this town every week, and there's so many things in town named Bentley, including the most prominent restaurants that's at like the crossroad in the town that you can't see anything but Bentley's. A local college is named after him. The answer is A, Woodstock, Vermont. He was from Woodstock, Vermont. And the really touching thing to me about him, I read his biography when I was doing my tours. People called him simple a lot, and the author of the biography thought that he was probably autistic. There was something different about him. But he was a brilliant genius. But he wasn't simple. He was different. So probably now we would say, that he was autistic or that he was on the spectrum or something like that. All right, let's move on to number 36. We're getting there. Number 36 is this beautiful storybook cottage. Don't you see a lot of this motif in rug hooking? What did he call snowflakes? He called them miracles of beauty, and he called each individual one ice flowers. Now, there's a title for a hook drug. I'm going to circle that, ice flowers. Storybook cottages. What is a storybook house? It is a quaint style of architecture. It's a cottage with very fanciful features, a style of architecture, almost like a fairy tale home. You would expect like Snow White to open the door if you knocked on one of these doors of these houses. Although the houses evoke visions of the European countryside, the style is wholly American. You do not find storybook cottages in other countries. They date to the 1920s era of Hollywood, right? Very specific. At that time, soldiers had recently returned from Europe after World War I. A lot of people were at work in California around the Los Angeles area. Walt Disney drove an ambulance in Europe during World War I. People who had been in the war had looked at a lot of these quaint European villages in France, Belgium, England, and when they came home, they wanted to build houses that looked like the houses they saw. And these became storybook cottages in the 1920s in Hollywood, and now you see them all over the country. There's a ton in my neighborhood. The most famous one was built in 1921. It was called the Witch's House. But these are that was in Beverly Hills, California. It was used in the movie Clueless. If you remember the movie Clueless, the Witch's House, built in 1921, was used in that movie. Now, it wasn't too long before storybook style cottages popped up all over the place. I'm sure you can picture them. Which of the following is not an architectural detail that you would identify or associate with a storybook cottage?
Okay.
A very steep roof, A. Pillars, B. Or turrets, C.
B.
And the answer is B, pillars. Absolutely not. Pillars are like Greek Revival, sometimes bungalow, but certainly not a storybook house. You get that flat front with those irregular sort of stacked gables. So good job if you got that one. Number 37. Good job. You're all getting it. Number 37, we're looking at what you can see is definitely a Grenfell rug. Lots of points on that last one. Now, I'm not going to go into the huge Grenfell history because I did a couple of episodes on Coffee Time, and I will return to it again. The silk stocking mats. Another mission, like not more of a mission than Chetty Camp. Chetty Camp was just, they were supplementing their income, and peddlers were coming and going. The Grenfell mission was a medical mission, so that was different. We've done lots of episodes on that, so you know what they look like. These were mats that were made out of silk stockings that people were giving the call out to, like the elite classes in the U.S. and saying, send us your stockings. And they were hooking with stockings. And the Grenfell mats is a huge subject that I'm not going to tackle in great detail now. But because you already know what they are, which of these motifs do you not find on a Grenfell mat? A jellyfish, B, a swan, or C, a duck? And I will tell you, you often find jellyfish, you often find ducks, but you will not find a swan.
Wow,
A swan is not a typical Canadian symbol. A swan is a British symbol, right? Remember the royal family has a swan as a symbol, and only the queens, going back to Queen Elizabeth, are allowed to eat swans, which thank goodness you don't hear, they often do. But no, swans you don't typically see in Grenfell mats, not original Grenfell mats. Often jellyfish because of the fishing connection, and often ducks, but not swans, not pretty swans. So the correct answer is B. I added that one. Moving on to number 38, which doesn't mean that Canadian rugs don't have swans. It means Grenfell rugs typically don't have swans. The Silk Stockings mat book doesn't have pictures of swans. Typically not. It's not impossible to find a Canadian mat with a swan, but jellyfish often, and what was the other one I said?
Ducks.
Often. Ducks often. So number 38, we're looking at these little devils, right? These three rabbits dancing. This is a commercial pattern because I've seen this come up multiple times. This is an old rug, but a commercial pattern. So my question for you for number 38, rabbits, rabbits live close to people, and for that reason I think we use them a lot in art and folk art because they're always around. No matter where you live, you probably are plagued by rabbits, particularly if you have a garden. They are beautiful, they are sweet, they are soft, they are so cute. I love rabbits, but people that have gardens do not love rabbits. They often appear in literature, plays, all kinds of media. Now, which of the following books / screenplays, I'm going to name one screenplay and two books, which of the following does not involve a rabbit as a main character? A, Watership Down, B, The Call of the Wild, or C, Harvey? What do you think? The correct answer is B, The Call of the Wild. The Jack London book does not include any mentions of rabbits. He was into bigger animals than that. Watership Down is an adventure novel by the British author Richard Adams, published in 1972, the year that I was born. It involved a small group of rabbits that were living in their natural habitat, which was a warren, which was being invaded by commercialization and expansion of the city. And it was the story, horribly sad story about the rabbits' struggle to survive this kind of change to an urban setting. Super, if you've seen it, you know it's super traumatizing. And C, Harvey was a 1944 play by Mary Chase, and it was about a man whose best friend was an over 6-foot rabbit that was invisible, and the ensuing fight that he was having with his sister, who was trying to put him into the nut house. And it became, you probably know it better, as a movie in 1950 with Jimmy Stewart. It was called Harvey. The play is also a great thing to read. The movie is very funny, but Harvey was a giant 6'3" rabbit. So hopefully you got that one right. Now moving on to number 39. You see this one with the tree. I just had to pick this one because it was beautiful. Look at this composition with the flowers, the horses, the tree in the middle. I didn't know what to do with this one. So you know what I went with? Look at the bottom, 1971. I went with the year 1971. So you know what? What happened in 1971? Well, just to put it into historical context, you know, the Civil War ended in 1965. Lincoln was shot also, of course, in 1965. 1865. Thank you. 1860. Give me some more sake.
I know, where's some more sake?
I'll take, no, I got one more drop.
Okay.
Play it through and then I'll have some more. In 1867, Parliament passed the North American Act to create the Dominion of Canada. That's for you Canadians. The per acre purchase price of Alaska that was paid by the U.S. to Russia in 1867 was 2 cents an acre.
So
this is
followed.
the time that we're talking about. But what about 1871? What about 1871? Which event did not happen in 1871? Two of these events happened. One of them is not in 1871. So is it A, Watership Down? Just kidding. Is it A, the first Indianapolis 500 car race? Is it B, the first Major League Baseball game is played? Or is it C, the Staten Island ferry disaster? So during the delay, I will tell you, make a good choice, that the answer is A, the first Indianapolis 500, right? Yeah. We were not using cars at that time. I mean, you were using the cars with the big gear in parks like Yosemite, but people did not typically have cars that would go at any speed. So the answer is A. The answer is A. That event, the first Indianapolis 500, happened in 1911, the same year I think as the sinking of the Titanic. So it was a car race on May 30th in Indianapolis. Ray Caroon wins, going 74 miles an hour in his car, which people do on the highway all the time, passing me twice that speed. Otherwise, B, the first Major League Baseball game was played May 4th in 1871. Lots of detail about that online. I won't get into that now, but it was the first major documented baseball game. It was not a huge success, and there was a huge hiccup after that. And the Staten Ferry Island disaster on July 30th, 1861, an explosion happened on the ferry boat, and it killed 72 people and injured another 135. So that was quite a thing that was in the news in 1871, wasn't it? 1871, 1875. What were we talking about? 71.
Oh, 71?
71. Okay. So going ahead to number 40, we got the circus theme going. Give us a like, too. Don't forget to give us a like. We're doing such hard work over here. Thank you so much for the comments. And subscribe, please. Always do good stuff on this channel. Game nights twice a month, man. Where can you get that, right? So number 40, I'm giving you a circus question, as you can imagine. It's an elephant question. So I found a few things about elephants that I thought were so funny. The first circus elephant that was intended for that purpose went on tour because she ate too much. Now, this is how that happened. In 1805, Hachulia Bailey, so like one of these old American names, bought an elephant thinking that it would plow his field. Bad call. So the elephant ate so much that it made no sense as a farm animal. So he ended up taking the elephant on tour. And he charged people 25 to 50 cents to see this elephant. That was a fortune. And he kept it behind a curtain so you couldn't just happen to peek at it, right? He was really careful about his investment here. He is the person who's credited with the modern circus because he is the person that first brought an elephant on tour for money for people to see. So another interesting thing that I found, and of course that's Bailey, like Barnum and Bailey, alcohol is something that elephants like, right? Cheers. They love to drink beer and wine, but they prefer bourbon, Tennessee whiskey. They love really hard booze. In 1922, a circus elephant named Tusco escaped and went on a rampage in Sedro-Woolley, Washington. I don't know the town. After crushing a Model T and running through backyards, a bunch of people's backyards, he burst into a local bar. This is a true story. And he got into a big batch of sour mash. By the time he was caught, he had pushed a house off its foundation, knocked down many people's walls, crushed and overturned 20 cars. So this was a proper drunken rampage of an elephant. In what year, this is your question, in what year did Barnum and Bailey stop using elephants in the circus? Was it 1996, 2006, or 2016? A, B, or C? Sounds like my kind of elephant. Totally. Totally.
Let's have fun.
He gets into the sour mash and he's off his chain. Literally.
Literally off his chain.
So the correct answer is 2016. So it was
got it.
quite recently.
It was
And you know,
very
the funny
recently.
thing was, if you remember in the news, Barnum and Bailey made a promise in 2018 to stop using elephants, and they did it 2 years earlier.
Really?
And they
That
didn't
was
have
great.
to, but they did.
They did.
So yeah, that was big thumbs up. They're laughing at Kira's comment. So let's look at number 41. See these beautiful blue flowers? This is in the thing too. If you look at ribbon candy hooking later, see the new patterns I put up of some of the rugs. If you enjoy the show and you're looking at the rugs, look at the ones that I chose or the ones I could choose, and they're absolutely gorgeous. Number 41. This is about flowers. This is particularly about bouquets. The oldest evidence of formal flower arranging goes back to, guess what? Ancient Egypt, like everything does. Although the oldest known book on flower arranging dates to 1445, and it is from Japan. Simplicity, linear forms, all of this is really important. So it's funny to know that flower arranging goes back to those early cultures. It was brought to Japan by Buddhist monks who learned it in China. Lots to say about this, but I'm going to paraphrase. In Europe, formal flower arranging was documented first by the Dutch. Of course, they painted very realistic paintings. If you've been to Amsterdam and you've looked at all the big museums there, lots of very realistic still lifes of flowers, right? Flower arranging and flowers, very big deal, not just tulips, everything. In the 18th century, arrangements were used to decorate the houses of only the wealthy and the aristocracy. But everybody loved flowers. And, you know, some people love eating flowers, right? And people still do eat flowers. But which of the following is not a flower that you should eat? It is not an edible flower for you or for your pets. Is it A, the iris, B, the pansy, or C, the violet?
What was A again?
A, the iris, B, the pansy, or C, the violet?
Jeez.
So I'm not giving the answer, but I will say you've seen like sugared pansies on dessert trays and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've also
So
seen
that
sugared
kind of
violets. So the
So it's A.
answer
That's
is
what I
A.
thought.
The iris is
yeah.
very poisonous. It's 3 out of 4 on a poison scale for you or your pets. It was not one of the flowers that will kill you, but it is certainly going to give you horrible diarrhea and make you very sick, quite sick.
Wow.
So stay away from the iris. You can
Good.
eat the other stuff.
I got that one.
Yeah. So number 42.
Yeah.
Hey, Ann. We're looking at the American flag. Yeah, people know their plants in this group. Beautiful American flag. So I'm going to talk about Betsy Ross, right? Betsy Ross, born in Philadelphia, 1752. She's known by several married names because she was married 3 times, which is unusual. She married, in 1870, her relatives credited her with having made the first American flag, right? So that's why I'm bringing her up. She met John Ross, who's a nephew of George Ross, who's a signer of the Declaration, and she married him. And unfortunately, she was a Quaker, and he was the son of a Church of England reverend. So her family completely ceased to know her. She was dead to them forever. They eloped in 1773, very unusual, at Hugg's Tavern in Gloucester City, New Jersey. And of course, the family split was forever. So that was that for her. They had no children as a couple. When the Revolutionary War broke out, they'd been married for 2 years, and he was killed by an explosion of gunpowder. It was not clear whether he was shot or it was an accident, but regardless, he died. So she continued through the rest of the year, making tents, doing things that she could do. They had opened an upholstery business. She was not a seamstress. They had an upholstery business. It was serious business. It was a really good business, too. She did a lot of stuff for the Continental Army that involved sewing. So she was doing that for the next years. And then in 1775, she married her second husband, a mariner named Joseph Ashburn. In 1780, his ship was captured by the Royal Navy, a frigate, and he was killed. So number 2 gone. The guy that he actually died in a British jail. He was rescued and brought to jail, and then he died. The guy who came back to tell her about the death of her husband was husband number 3. So she had a busy life. That was her third husband, John Claypole. In the end, I forget how many, 5 daughters she had. So none with the first husband, I think all with the third husband. But in any case, she herself, sadly, both her mother, father, sister all died in the same year of yellow fever. This was the time of that too. Her husband died the next year, her last husband. She was left alone. By that time, she still had the upholstery business, but she'd become blind. So she moved in with one of her daughters. Not good. And she died at the age of 84, so that's okay. So she had a bit of a, for this time, she had a bit of a wild family life, but she also came from a big family. How many siblings do you think Betsy Ross had? This is a tough one unless you know this story. Do you think she had 12 siblings, right? She would be the 13th, 14 or 16? And insanely enough, the correct answer is 16. There were 17 children in her Quaker family. So for her to leave, elope with a person of another religion, start an upholstery business that was successful is extraordinary. I mean, she had an extraordinary life. She did it on her own. She really made a break. So let's move on to number 43. It's getting late, but let's get this done. Number 43, you're looking at a picture of a beaver, right? This little guy here. Love this guy. Canadians, you probably know what's coming. So a picture of a beaver, number 43. The ever-resourceful, clever beaver is the symbol of Canada. Of course, it's because of the fur trade, right? The fur trade was instrumental in the settlement of Canada. But every province in Canada has a different, for example, bird, tree, fruit, just like we do with states in the U.S. They all celebrate the variety and the differences. But which of the following animals is not an animal that represents one of the Canadian provinces? This is going to be easier for Canadians.
Oh, wow.
Is it A, a caribou, B, a polar bear, or C, a red fox? I will give you a split second to figure that one out. So one of them I threw in. Two of them do represent provinces. I didn't write down what provinces. Canadians, help me. I can't believe I didn't write it down. I had it up when I did it. The answer that I added was polar bear. That is not one of the animals that represents a Canadian province.
Good.
Canadians, help me. What province is caribou and what province is red fox? Can you put that in the comments? And I'm going to move on. I want to add that to my notes too. So let's move on to number 44. This beautiful image. We've seen this on Coffee Time. We covered Mary Shepard Burton for quite some time. The Folklife Museum at the Library of Congress has her collection called the Tell Me Bout series, and we covered this for a week on Coffee Time because I love her so much. Each one of her rugs relates a personal story from the Burton family, from her family tree. Now this particular rug you're looking at is called A Chicken in Every Pot. And if you can see on the rug, up in the tree, there's a little red figure with a little red shirt. That is Mary's father perched up in the tree, getting a bird's eye view of the inauguration that's happening of this president. Is the president A, Calvin Coolidge, B, Herbert Hoover, or C, Franklin Roosevelt? What do you think, Mom?
Is it A?
No,
B.
it's B.
It's B.
It's B, Herbert Hoover. So Herbert Hoover, his slogan was not a chicken in every pot.
That's what I'm
It's
trying to
cure.
think.
Well, it's a Hoover slogan. The advertisement that caused President Herbert Hoover's opponents to state that he had promised voters a chicken in every pot and 2 cars in every garage happened during the campaign of 1923. During the campaign, Democrats sought to embarrass the president by recalling his alleged statement. According to an article in the New York Times, Hoover never made the statement. The report was based on an ad placed by a local committee.
Wow.
That's unfortunate, isn't it?
And
Because he
people
didn't
remember it.
actually
They
say
still
that.
say it.
That's the thing that everybody associates with
Yeah.
Herbert Hoover, isn't it?
Yes.
So the correct answer was B, Herbert Hoover.
Son of a gun.
On our last page here, let's move on to 45, the lollipop tree here.
Oh.
Now, this is Magdalena Evie Briner. We've done a lot of Coffee Time stuff with her, too. She lived between 1932 and 1915. I think it was Perry County, Pennsylvania, something like that. Beautiful. Folk art masterpieces. Her rugs are extremely collectible, valuable. She did birds, cats, horses, all kinds of animals. But her most famous motif is a very original motif that you're looking at called the lollipop tree. Now, moving away from that as a theme, do you remember a 1965 song called The Lollipop Tree? Do you remember?
No.
Okay. So I know we're running late, but I have to read this to you because I stumbled upon this song for the first time and I absolutely fell in love with it. This is the lyric to the song. Let this inspire you to make a hook drug. This is the lyric. The Lollipop Tree, 1965. One fine day in early spring, I played a funny trick. Right in the yard behind our house, I planted a lollipop stick. And every day I watered it well and watched it carefully. I hoped one day that stick would grow to be a lollipop tree. Ha ha ha, ho ho ho, and a lot of this kind of thing. Second verse. Then one day I wake up to find a very lovely sight. A tree all full of lollipops that had grown in the dark of the night. I sat beneath the wonderful tree and looked up with a grin, and when I opened up my mouth, a pop would drop right in. Ha ha ha, ho ho ho, and more of this. Last verse, my favorite. Listen to this one. This is so good. Winter came and days grew cold, as winter days will do. On my tree, my lovely tree, not one little lollipop grew. From every branch an icicle hung. The twigs were bare as bones, but when I broke the icicles off, they turned into ice cream cones. Isn't that the best? Do you know that song? I did not know this song, but your question is, who recorded that song in 1965? Was it A, Roger Whittaker? Was it B, Burl Ives? Or was it C, Gene Autry? Thank you, Joelle. Red Fox is for Prince Edward Island, and the Caribou is for Newfoundland, Labrador. Thank you. Major ball drop, thank you. So what do you think? Roger Whittaker, Pearl Ives, or Gene Autry? And of course, it's Burl Ives.
Had to be.
He did so many records for children. I just thought that was the most sweet and quaint little thing I'd ever heard. I loved it so much. So let's go on to number 46. This image here. So, you love that song, Joelle. I was just introduced to it. But you know what? I have to say, the ho, 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 ha, ha, ha. Doesn't that sound like the Wizard of Oz? Like,
it
ho, ho,
does.
ho, ha, 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 do, 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 do.
Yes.
The merry old land of Oz. Right, it sounds like a bit of a ripoff, 40 years later. So we're looking at this one here. This rug is called Project Runway, right?
Really?
It is. Look at how strange it is. It's so different. It's not strange. It's so creative. Yeah. So this highly imaginative rug called Project Runway involves a composition of reedy plants that look like little characters. Half are walking up and half are walking back, just like a fashion runway, wearing whimsical leaves and petals. Who is the artist who is so well known for her color and her graphic design sort of sensibility, who hooked and designed this rug? Is it A, Sharon Smith, B, Susan Feller, or C, Merrill Cook? You are right. We celebrated Sharon Smith's life last week. Yes. We did a long episode last Friday night, a tribute to her life, her being a former graphic designer and such an important person in the rug hooking world as a designer, as a teacher, as a mentor, as an artist. The correct answer is A, Sharon Smith. Let's move on to 47. And if you haven't watched that Sharon Smith episode from last Friday night, please do. Thank you, Nada. Nada was Sharon's best friend.
Oh, nice.
That's nice.
Oh.
So you got that for sure. You give yourself extra points. So we're looking at this rug here with the two cornucopias. Now we know we've talked so much about cornucopias as a folk art motif and what it means. We're not going to go into crazy detail about this because of the late hour, but the cornucopia, is like a wicker basket. It's commonly used as a Thanksgiving centerpiece. It's a symbol of abundance, of plenty, the horn of plenty, of nourishment, of all of these things, right? So it actually comes from Latin corna, meaning horn, and cope, meaning plenty. So that makes a lot of sense. But here's the twist. The cornucopia is actually an ancient symbol whose origins are in mythology. Now, do you know the most often cited myth about a cornucopia involves a Greek god? Do you know the story and do you know the god? Is it A, Zeus, B, Poseidon, or C, Apollo? They're all winners, right? It could be any of them. So it might be, unless you're up on your mythology, it might be just a guess. But the answer is A, Zeus. The Greek god Zeus, who is said to have been nursed by Amalthea, who was a goat. One day he was playing too roughly with her, and he broke one of her horns. Filled with the fruits of the harvest, it became the horn of plenty. So this is actually a Greek myth that spinned out over time. And the answer is A, Zeus. Interesting, huh? Everything goes back to those Egyptians and those Greeks, huh? Now here we go. Look at this one. What number is this, Mom? 48. We're looking at the scarecrow. I love this composition. If you know this, please let me know. I did not use this in mine because I could not verify it. It's a great early composition. It's an older rug that Sotheby's showed. and sold a while ago, but I couldn't find anything else on it, and I couldn't find any other examples of it having been made. So let me know if you know anything about this. During medieval times in Britain, the scarecrow was originated. And the origin of the scarecrow was that actual human children, like actual children, would run through the fields and throw stones at birds when they landed on crop fields. Now, because of this, people then started to put up things that looked like children in the fields. So you get things like in the Egyptian period before this that are scarecrows that are not a figure of a person. The first example of a figure of a person happens in Britain because children are actually acting as scarecrows. And then they start making scarecrows modeled after children. So scarecrows are obviously one of the great symbols of fall. Now, one of the most famous scarecrows of all time, talking about the Wizard of Oz, was Ray Bolger, one of my favorites. Great singer who starred along Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz. He was an excellent singer himself. Now, which of these songs from The Wizard of Oz did not have a singing part by the scarecrow, Ray Bolger? Was it A, If I Were King of the Forest, B, The Merry Old Land of Oz, ha ha ha, ho ho ho, or C, If I Only Had a Brain?
Which was not?
Which was not. He sang on 2 of these tracks.
He sang on 2.
One of them was a song that belonged to a different cast member, and he didn't have a singing part.
Okay.
Okay. So the answer is A. So If I Were King of the Forest was sung by the lion, right? So the answer, A is the correct answer. The Merry Old Land of Oz was an ensemble song. The whole cast sang. They sang it. It was sung. It had a reprise, 2 reprises. So they sang it multiple times, and he had his parts in all of those. And of course, If I Only Had a Brain was his signature song. I could while away the hours, consulting with the flowers, conferring with the rain. Great song. Harry Connick covered it really nicely too.
Yes.
Now, number 49, our second to last, is this beautiful little old folky rug. Again, I think this is Skinner, but this is one of the auction houses. I only looked at Skinner, Pook and Pook, and Sotheby's for auctions. And I pulled up a lot of these old folk rugs. This is one of the ones I put in too. But this is a great little folk rug of a dog and a cat. Number 49. Dogs and cats have always been popular characters in comic books and cartoons, right? Particularly in the mid-century. I grew up with cats like Top Hat, Heathcliff, Garfield, of course Tom from Tom and Jerry. Which of the following, now we're not talking about cats, we're switching to dogs. Which of the following is not a comic book or cartoon dog? Is it A, Snowy, B, Babalooey, or C, Astro? Thank you, Doreen. I was just fooling around, but I was a cabaret singer back in the day. Seems like so long ago. Back in the day, the crazy days. This is a toughie. Do you know the answer?
I just put B. I had no idea.
Oh, you were right. It is B.
So I took a guess.
Snowy. Do you remember Tintin, right? The European character Tintin. It was written by Hergé. It was a Belgian cartoonist, and Snowy was a white fox terrier. You know Tintin now, the character.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
he was always with Snowy. His dog was Snowy.
Okay.
Great series. And Astro was the Jetsons dog.
Of course, I knew that one. I knew that was.
So that leaves Babalooey. Babalooey was a burro, like a donkey, right? He was a burro.
I was thinking of Ricky Babaloo. And
like from I Love Lucy?
No. Completely off. You can tell it's getting late.
No, it's B. Babalooey. He was the sidekick, the deputy to Quick Draw McGraw of the Quick Draw McGraw. He was a burro and he was the little deputy.
Oh, cute.
Tintin was all the rage in Canada. Of course it was. Yeah, in Europe too. I mean, you cannot get away from Tintin. It's such an iconic series. So far-fetched too. Sometimes on the moon, sometimes in Egypt, going back to the pyramids. It was so far-reaching. Last question of the night. Last question of the night. Number 50. And this is the image I'm showing you. This is a city setting. Isn't this beautiful? Marion Sykes. She's one of my favorites. We did her on Coffee Time when we were talking about the week we talked about storytellers. Marion Sykes. I said legendary hookers because that's how I feel about her. Legendary hooker Marion Sykes had a really tough life. Like a really tough life, if you remember that Coffee Time. She ran away from an orphanage. She was an Italian. She was heavily discriminated against. And then she became a single mother. And it didn't get any better. So she worked like multiple jobs. She had a lot of kids. Her life was hard. She did the best she could, bringing them to 1 or 2 places over the summer and just making it work. She had a really tough life. But in her later years, she began hooking. And she always said that she chose to remember the good times, not the bad times, because there were so many bad times. She remembered the good times. And part of what she loved was the city where she was born, where she always lived. And she included the city in all of her work, whether it was out a window, if you remember the one at the ballet studio where her daughter took ballet, the best years of her teenage life. Whether they were at the beach, she would see the city in the distance. Whatever she chose, this one, she's actually in the center of the city, right across the street from her actual house. Her city is everything to her. She constantly shows street festivals, fireworks, parks, skyscrapers, not huge skyscrapers, that's a clue. What city are we talking about, right? It's in all of her rugs. What city are we talking about? New York, A, B, Detroit, or C, Chicago?
I don't know.
The answer is Chicago, Chicago,
which one
that
was that, A, B, or C?
town. C.
C. Oh,
C.
got it
I
wrong.
put C for Chicago since it begins with
Oh,
C.
that's right.
The
That
answer
was
is C.
good.
She's from Chicago. Her heart was always in Chicago. She loved Chicago. And as hard as her life was, she put Chicago into all of the work that she did, even interiors, Chicago. See, there's a lot, I mean, there's going to be a lot of wrong answers because that was an extremely tough question. But I love Marion Sykes, and I felt I wanted to end on Chicago, Chicago. So I hope that you had fun tonight. This was our first ever trivia night. I tried to put together questions that had to do with lots of different subjects, but particularly subjects that I thought you would like, as I know many of your interests, and I know a lot of them overlap with mine. But I hope that that was fun. We looked at a lot of rugs. If you get a chance and you're still celebrating when we sign off and we refill the sake, check ribboncandyhooking.com. I put a lot of the antique rugs that had no copyright issues onto the site for sale. Everything is under $50. You know I don't do crazy expensive patterns. You can get anything as a kit. Just ask me and I'll figure it out. But a lot of beautiful rugs tonight. And I pulled from a lot of the auction websites, Pook and Pook, Sotheby's, and Skinner's. Lots of great questions, lots of great answers. Please like the video and subscribe. I have coffee time daily. I'm glad that you loved it. Full of information. Hey, you know what? For the next trivia night, a month from tonight, if you have ideas for questions, questions I can ask, please send them to me, because this took me like 3 days, 4 days to put together. If you have any ideas, like a rug that you can send me a picture, even one of your rugs, and then give me an idea for a trivia question that I can add, that would help me so much be able to do this night, because I really enjoyed it. Learning, looking, sharing, guessing, laughing. Just a fun way to start the weekend, I hope. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. I will see you on Monday. We will continue in Canada. We will continue our Chetty Camp series, and we'll look at some different aspects of rug cooking in Canada in the early 20th century. Monday, 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. Tuesday and Thursday. Wednesday, we Zoom. That information is always available to you on the Facebook page and also in the thread for coffee time. And of course, next Friday will be a regular cocktail time. You want to say goodnight to the viewers? Don't trip on the cord. Don't trip on the cord.
Whoa.
She's not Norma Desmond anymore.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Happy weekend from us.
Hi,
Teddy, come say goodnight.
Watch the cord.
Teddy's going to come. Watch the cord. Watch
Come
the
on,
cord.
say good night.
Good night.
Good
Here comes
night.
Teddy. He's going to say goodnight too. Good night from us to you. Happy weekend.